What's going on, everybody? Hail. Thank you for being here on a Tuesday night. So we have Dark Horse Discourse number 6. And yeah, today the topic is going to be primarily around some buzzwords that have been popping up in the indie space lately, and that's gatekeeping and elitism. Neither of which really makes sense, given that it's the indie or independent space. But we'll jump into that. We'll also do a little bit of promoting, of course, and a little bit of recommending as well. So let's check in on the chat here. We have Zombie Boy, welcome. We have Johnny Douglas, thank you for stopping by. So he says the thing that's necessary for any creator, author, or comic creator is time and effort and persistence. Your first creation will never be good as your last creation. Um, I would say in some cases, I'd say your last creation should definitely be more fine tuned, right? But your first story idea could be better than your last story idea. I mean, we have seen many creators where, I mean, their characters or their stories in general just are not as fresh or unique over time. And sometimes they kind of hit a wall. But they should definitely be better at actual storytelling and kind of fine tuning everything. So we have Jimmy the Lumberjack. Hail. We have Mr. Godfo Universe here, who is going to be jumping in here soon as a special guest. We have Primal Gecko. Welcome. We have Baki. What's going on? All right. Let me bring Mr. Godfo to the stage here while we start getting through more of the
Yo,
chat here. What's going on?
hey man, thanks for having me on. I was really excited about this topic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is one that you touch on quite frequently when it comes to tweets. Yourself and Nick Axe is another gentleman. Always chiming in when it comes to quality and things of that nature. Some people don't touch the topic with a 10-foot pole, which can be worrisome. But others, are willing to be a little more outspoken. I'd like to be the same as well.
Yeah, it comes from me. It comes from the music background, especially the punk background, and like that's a mixture and a dichotomy. But like that's what I would love to get into. That's why I like hit you like, hey man, get me on this. I wanna talk. I want to spit this with you.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and for those that don't know, Godfo here, he has an active, I think you still have an active campaign, right? You guys have
Yeah,
put
I
out
think a week
novels and
left.
graphic novels, comics, got a lot of stuff out there.
Oh yeah, we got a week left on our current one. Polyon 20XX Volume 2. It's 15 bucks, 100 pages, black and white, already done. And or you can get the volume 1 and 2 and the ash can for 35 bucks. That's about 300 pages worth of stuff. And we've got other tiers as well, but yep, we got about a week left. We basically met our goal already, and it's already ready to be printed. So people are getting their book no matter. If you see, we have Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Fund My Comics. So if you see one that's not 100% funded, the book's still getting published and everything. You're going to get your stuff.
Nice. So yeah, I just actually posted a link in the chat here. So for Indiegogo, you only need another $140 to hit the
Yep.
goal on that one to get you
Thank you,
all
sir.
three. So definitely folks check that out. There's some really affordable options here. I mean, what the one book is 100 pages. You got catch up tiers that are very affordable. So I would definitely recommend folks check that out. And yeah,
Yeah,
we'll pull that up as well at some point tonight.
I appreciate it. Victor, the lore seeker. Yeah, there is a digital option.
Nice. There you go. All right, and then yeah, let's see if we can catch up with the chat a little. I'm still getting used to this whole like having people in the chat thing. So
BA, let me pull up the one about my guns. Like
wait, which one?
the one you just pulled out. Like, you're like, let me pull up the one about how great my muscles are.
Oh, jeez,
Just nonchalantly.
it's in order, I swear. Oh, when do we get workout tips for those guns? That's something I've considered. I don't know. I've trained for over 20 years, and I mean, I competed in bodybuilding and the whole nine yards, and but I've just never been the type to do the whole Instagram thing or try to coach people. I mean, people come and ask for tips. I'll try to, help them, but it's obviously not a one size fits all for folks. But yeah, maybe I'll toss some videos in there at some point for the folks in the comic space that are into working out. But Yeah, so maybe eventually.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
Minnesota tuxedo. Yep, I love my my flannel. That's for sure.
Did you mean for the shirt to match your lights?
No, that was a nice coincidence. I was in too of a hurry to switch the light setting from what I had last week, so just worked out. Got Andrew Campbell. Welcome. Point being that your next work is always going to be a marked improvement on your first work. Yeah, in terms of fine tuning, I'd say for sure. In terms of story, I mean, you never know, right? Some people their first story is a banger, and the next one could be a dud. Kind of that leave that up to the audience in the long run. We have Victor the Lore Seeker. Welcome, Super Tizo. Welcome. I only care about how much a story makes and how and not how good a story is. Well played. We have Katie Did. Welcome. How's it going? She also dropped the link to my book. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. And let's see here. All right. So, yeah, let's jump right into the topic. So, per the usual, if one big name brings up a particular topic in the indie space, it starts to spread like wildfire. And in this case, the topic of gatekeeping popped up, which then led into elitism and then using terms such as old guard and things of that nature. And then you see people obviously parroting such notions. But to me, really the only gatekeeper um, in the market, let's say, because there is no gatekeeper or gatekeeping when it comes to indie comics, right? There's no tryouts. Anyone can literally put anything on Indiegogo, Kickstarter, regardless of quality, level of thought put into it, you name it. There is literally nothing that prevents anyone from doing a comic or a novel. The only thing that could be preventing them is maybe their personal financial situation, right? Maybe they can't get enough money put together to at least get enough art to kick off the campaign. That's a possibility. But that has nothing to do with everyone else, right? That's not anyone preventing said person from jumping into the indie market.
Oh
Now, when it
yeah,
comes to the mainstream, sure, there's gatekeeping, right? When it comes to political ideologies, um, when it comes to literary agents, especially in the novel space, right, they will gatekeep folks based on sexuality, based on gender, based on a large, long checklist of items. But none of that exists in the indie space.
yeah, and that's the good and bad of indie. And I actually made a post about the democratization of animation because I've been seeing that more on the rise with larger YouTubers. Is these are guys that grew up on anime. I mean, we all did in some way, and that's great. But now they're kind of making their own anime, and it's not great. It's not gonna be great, and I hate to say that, but it's like that's what democratization usually does. Like we saw it with Napster in music and all this kind of stuff. And I'm a musician. I come from that background, and I make comics as well. But the synthesizer gave rise to the DAW, which is the digital audio workstation, which gave rise to auto tune, et cetera, et cetera. And anybody can get a DAW, get plugins, and make a song today. We've heard it before. I mean, that's what Soldier Boy literally did. I think he used Fruity Loops to make the song Soldier Boy. But for every Soldier Boy, which we'll branch into that, who's successful, there's millions that aren't. And that's the whole point. Like that's what democratization does. It takes what was like divine right, so say elite in a good way, and it gives it to everybody. It puts it in everybody's hands. And when you do that, you're going to get some gold. That's going to happen. You're going to get a 1 in a million, but you're going to get 999,999 out of a million. They are probably awful. And I mean, I agree with you. That's the whole point of indie comics, is that there are no gatekeepers. Now, if we want to talk groups, I know there's Comics Gate, Iron Age, whatever, and you might say that that's gate kept in some ways. And it's like, well, those are groups. That's what the whole point of groups is, to gatekeep. And whether I watched your last stream, and I saw someone just trying to basically debate you the whole time, and basically about that topic. And you made a good point, the difference between criticism and attacking. I mean, that's what gatekeeping is. Gatekeeping is insulating your group whatever group you're a part of. We're the Godfrey Universe. Just for the record, we're not part of any group because we own a business. We don't attach any group to our business because it's a literal business. Tangent aside, gatekeeping is keeping people out of your walls. Attacking is going outside of the walls and hurting someone.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, the words gatekeeping, attacking, elitism, and canceling, right? They've all been bastardized to a point that half the time, if not 75 to 99% of the time that those words get used, they're used improperly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually insulting to the real meaning, of said words. And elitism is one that just it makes me laugh. And I think a lot of times it's a mixture of a few things. One, it's jealousy in regards to the folks that have already succeeded and that are still thriving in the indie space but came from the mainstream, right? The word pro recently has been tossed around essentially as like talking down towards that word versus historically, right? People always look up to, right, professional athletes, professional musicians, people of that nature, right? Because they've actually succeeded, their work has made it through the test of time, and they've earned their spot as whether it's a legend or just a known name in the space. But now you have folks that are almost bitter that hey, these pros have came into the indie space and they're criticizing others and they're actually speaking their mind around what they think is high quality and is not high quality. But the thing is, that's not elitism. That's just them speaking their mind. That's no different than a brand new person in the space coming in with no experience and speaking their mind. Doesn't matter if it's nonsense or not, everyone has that freedom of speech. Literally, it's not elitism, it's just people speaking their mind. And the thing is, crowdfunding wouldn't be in the position it is today if it weren't for many of these pros because they brought a lot of eyes and a lot of readers and backers literally to crowdfunding. And a lot of those backers are still here backing crowdfunding projects. So I personally am very thankful that they came into our space, right? If a Rob Liefeld or some of that nature were to come in and interact with and start promoting indie creators, of course I would appreciate that. I mean, who wouldn't? That's a win for everybody.
Yeah,
And
and we had
so,
we had that happen recently with Mark Millar,
yeah,
and
exactly.
we can get into, and this is why I wanted to talk to you because it doesn't devolve into yelling and screaming.
Hmm.
We can get into how people feel about other creators. That's fine. And we'll give our I'll give my opinion, Josh will give his opinion, that's our artist, and we'll stay out of it and just give our opinion and be honest about it. When Mark Millar started promoting indies, nobody had a problem.
Hmm.
And part of that was because he didn't or was not part of a group. The thing is, people have problems with certain groups, not and certain members of those groups more than they have a problem with those people being or not being ex pros.
Hmm.
That's what it is. I think the elitist argument isn't really about pros, it's about personalities.
Yeah, I agree. And in that same vein, right, certain personalities, they're either not able to take criticism, right, or they simply don't understand where the criticism is coming from, right, because they lack the experience in said space. And so you're seeing pros, non-pros, whatever, coming in saying, hey, let's say 3D assets, for example. Like, we don't think they should be in indie comics or AI shouldn't be in indie comics. And you have others saying, oh, that's elitism. Well, no, it's not. It's literally just folks speaking their minds on a topic. That's it. It's preference, right? It's no different than saying, hey, I'd like more or less CGI in a film. That's it. It's just preference.
Yeah, I think and those are interesting topics. I mean, AI, almost everybody can AI is such a a funny and scary topic, because what's going to happen, what's already happening, is everyone will publicly outcry it, and then some people will start using it behind closed doors until 5-10 years down the line it's an open secret. Everybody uses it, and then that's the new excuse. It's the same thing with the 3D assets thing.
Mhm.
Whenever that happened, and let's be honest, like, I'm not trying to stir a pot here. The Ripaverse ruined 3D assets for everybody. That's what it was. And people were using it, manga was using it, but people were using it well. ISOM 1 did not use them well.
Mhm.
I mean, that's it. I mean, and I got into it with the creator, and like I said, I wouldn't try to, I don't mind the guy, I wouldn't try to get into it, and I wish him no, like, ill will, but don't like, we can't beat around the bush with that kind of stuff. It was ISOM 1 that launched 3D assets into the mainstream view and made people go, "Oh God, that's not how you use them."
Mhm.
Um, no one, I don't think, really cares if 3D assets are used. That just became a hot topic of how they're used. And unfortunately, that's going to be how AI is, I think. And I don't mind if an artist uses AI properly. My view of AI is it's a tool of humans. Humans don't need to be a tool of it. If you gin up something with AI, then take it and change it and make it cool and make it art. By all means, use it. Now let me reframe this. I am not the artist for my book, so you're not going to find AI in my book because I'm not the artist that does it. I have to
Mhm.
say that as a businessman. But if I saw someone make something cool with AI where it wasn't just strictly AI, they took it, implemented it, and they were artists and masters of it, by all means. The problem is what's going to happen is, and it might be already happening with, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think this new Chuck Dixon book about the Crusades is like AI. Like, and you're not helping your case, especially when you're like working with a company that just did like the 3D assets debacle. And
Mhm.
that kind of cynicism, if I might use that word, it's not good for, it's, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say good for business, because business and art are two different things, unfortunately. It's not a good look.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And you know, a lot of comments in regards to that campaign too were like, "Oh, well, they didn't bother to mention the AI until like at the very bottom of the campaign, and it was kind of worded in a way that was could be confusing to folks that don't know a lot of the kind of nuance that's going on with AI in comics and in the art space." And yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, personally, I would never ever attach myself or be involved with a project involving AI at all.
Yeah.
Um, but to see pros, which is ironic, right? Um, being involved with projects using that is, all I'll say is Frank Miller and Alan Moore, I don't think they would ever, ever attach themselves to such a project. That would be such a slap in the face. And the way I view it is, especially writers, right?
Mhm.
You, these pros were able to make a living because of artists. Yes, their stories play a part in it, but they would not have been able to tell that story in such a visual manner if it wasn't for said artists. And then to purposely take them out of the equation, whether that's to save money, speed things up, is so insulting, not only to the to artists, but to the entire medium as a whole. Like that is what provided you an income for your entire life, essentially. That's what made you famous. And then you're going to be attached to AI on a project. Like that's just, I don't know, that rubs me the wrong way
Yeah,
personally.
it's crapping on the entire history of the industry and the
Hmm.
art form. And like I said, I mean, this is to cover all the bases. Like I said, I was a musician first, in that was my natural talent, and then writing. I don't do visual art, but I could see I could use AI and make something really cool. Like, that's, I know, because I know how music works. I could take something AI made and I could tell you exactly the chord structure, melody structure, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I could see an artist, a really good artist, making something with AI and then breaking it apart and making something artistic with it. Think that should be disclosed, though. If it was
Oh yeah.
made, but that's not what this comic is, and that's not what people are going to use it for. That's what some rare 1 in a billion person will use it for. That's what an artist would do. When it's lame, democratized like this, it's just one person. I want to get my idea out, but I don't want to pay for it, and I don't want to strive, and I don't want to work. It's the pornification of art. I mean, that's what porn is. It's I want instant gratification instead of intimacy with another person or working with another person, basically connecting with another person. And that's what AI will allow people to do. I want my instant gratification of my work without having to strive for it or having to pay for it. If you won't sacrifice for your art is pointless. And this is another topic. I don't care what the market says. A market does not determine what is good. A market determines what is successful. Taylor
Mhm.
Swift is successful. Is she better than Prince? No one agrees with that unless you're a 20-year-old drunk white girl.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
those are two different things. Art and the market are two different things.
Yeah, and see, well, I'm gonna have to jump into that second here, but one thing I wanted to tack on to the AI portion of the topic was what's most insulting is when these folks use AI or a majority of their book is 3D assets, yet they charge the same price as if they commissioned a full art team. If your book, if half of the work is done from the keyboard, literally typing in prompts or literally click and drag, your price should be significantly different. Otherwise, that, in my opinion, is taking advantage of your backers. If you're still charging 25, $35 for a comic that isn't even filled with real art, I mean, that's just disgusting. I, that's absolutely wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
But we're
very
going to
it's
see more and more of it because there are so many people that come into the space with just dollar signs in their eyes, like, "Oh, I'm going to make 50,000. I'm going to make 100,000 like this guy." But they're going to have that mindset of, "How do I do it by spending the least amount of time, effort, and money, but still getting as much cash out of backers as possible?" Versus a lot of folks, especially in our circle, right? We're I mean, we have limited capital, but we're still offering extremely affordable prices, and we would continue to lower prices, right, if we can do larger batch size runs and all of that. And a lot of people are holding prices even though the price of printing and everything is going up. These folks are taking major shortcuts and charging higher prices than a lot of us. And it's really disheartening to see them get 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, whatever in funding, and for those backers to not even realize what's going on.
yeah, and that ties into the topic of gatekeeping and elitism because what you're saying is what's true is like I can't stop people from making this and selling it. But groups of people can get together and say, we don't want to buy that. We're not going to buy that. That is gatekeeping. That is gatekeeping of yourself and your dignity and your wallet and your community. Um, but you're not attacking someone. You're not saying they can't do that. You're saying, I don't think they should be able to. I don't think that's art, but you're not going to go out of your way to attack someone just because they made an AI book.
Mhm.
As attacking as in attacking their character and trying to get their book taken down from a site and all that. Hey, Mr.
Well,
Self-Destruct.
and the thing that a lot of people overlook too is the fact that a lot of these AI generators are literally taking images and art without the permission of the original artists. So there's so many layers to this, whether you want to take it from a moral perspective or I don't know, just proper business perspective, where some people could literally say, "Hey, it's essentially theft."
Mhm.
Right? You had literally the government going after, right, Napster and things of that nature in the past. How is this much different? It's the only difference is, you're not taking one image and then taking it and using it. You're taking 20, 30, or maybe thousands of images, and because they're getting chopped and screwed up, that makes it okay. Well, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, and the worst part is AI is a Pandora's box because all these years it was gathering all this data and nobody really knew. and then it came out like, oh, everything's already stolen. We've already got it, and it's going to keep going because it's integrated forever.
Mhm.
And the cynical take is, well, why don't we use it because it's already done? And it's like, okay, that's really hard to get behind. It like that's I mean, I hate to sound like a doomer, but that's what it will be. That's what the next generation of kids will be who grow up with AI art and they won't really even know it. They'll be swimming in the water. It won't matter to them. In fact, I'm not trying
Mhm.
to like self promote too much. I read a whole blog about this called AI, the God that can only fail, and it's on our site. But it better articulated my thoughts than this. But that is the unfortunate progression of these things of democratization. And again, I come from a punk background, but the whole point of that, the whole point of democratization is that it lets more people in to make cooler or at least different things. Maybe not stylistically or technically better. Democratization in comics is what let us go from um, Jack Kirby, fantastic, to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, they know that the artists knew they couldn't hold a candle to Jack Kirby, but
Mhm.
Jack Kirby didn't make something like Ninja Turtles. That's what democratization allows. That is what it's supposed to allow, and that's what, getting rid of gatekeeping allows. When you're trying to take Ninja Turtles and say it is new gods, like, no, these are the new gods,
Mhm.
and they're trying to compete with them on that way and that level, people know that's bullshit.
Mhm.
And that's where gatekeeping comes in. It says, no, you don't get to basically claim Jack Kirby's legacy. You don't get to claim that you are of this technical skill. You have your own cool thing, but it's on a different wavelength, if that makes sense. And I think
Mhm.
that's what people are trying to articulate and aren't doing so well. It's you have some ex pros that are masters of their craft, but that doesn't mean you can't create something completely different than them, and it's not be awesome. Like um, Todd McFarlane didn't make Akira, and those guys are both masters in their own right. And Jim Lee didn't make Ninja Turtles, to use them again. He didn't make Hellboy. But I hate to say it, it's just there's so many non-artists in this sphere trying to have an artistic conversation, and they don't even have the words to articulate it.
Mhm. Yeah, and then so Dr. Ben says so there's no gatekeeping in indie comics unless you use AI. If I got your position correct. So I'm not saying people shouldn't be allowed to use AI. What I'm saying is everybody else has the right to call it out, right? To say, hey, this person's using AI. I think it's immoral. I think it's wrong. And I do think that said projects, it should be like labeled like blatantly like AI. It almost should have its own category, in my opinion, on crowdfunding sites, right? So that it's actually established that it is not a standard traditional like art comic, for example. Now, of course, that's up to the crowdfunding sites. If I ran a crowdfunding site, I wouldn't allow AI related projects personally, but, my suggestion to those sites would be, hey, it's got to be flagged, it's got to be apparent, and hell, let's even make a new category for them. Doesn't mean they're not allowed to create a comic. And again, you could create your own comic using AI, and you could create your own website and sell it. Right? There's literally no gatekeeping still when it comes to indie comics. There's literally nothing that's stopping anyone from creating a comic. And I think where going back into the whole gatekeeping and elitist topic, I think a lot of people, again, they're equating having high standards to gatekeeping. Now, I think sometimes folks are doing that. Maybe it's a little bit out of guilt, right? Because maybe they're ashamed of the quality of their books and the criticism that they've received. So they're trying to basically redirect some of that criticism towards, oh, well, they're being elitist or, they're trying to gatekeep me, right? Victim mentality, essentially. And of course, there's a difference between criticism that is meant to, or that is honest, that is meant to help people versus trolling versus straight up lying. Of course, right? We've all experienced all different aspects or types of criticism, but it's still not gatekeeping you. It does not stop you from producing another comic. It does not stop you from improving. It doesn't stop you from taking the good things out of said criticisms and actually improving your work. And again, I think a lot of folks are using these two buzzwords essentially to try to take shots at pros because, of course, these pros that worked in the mainstream have high standards. They most of them, right? They hold their own work up to very high standards. And so if folks come in saying, "Oh, I'm doing it better than the mainstream," or "I'm going to do it better than the mainstream," or "I'm going to dance on the graves of folks that were in the mainstream," and all this nonsense, well, of course, the standard that they're going to have for that work coming out is going to be very high because they are hyping it up as if it's better or as good as the mainstream. So if it comes out and in their opinion, it's not up to that level, and they call it out, again, that's not them gatekeeping or being elitist. That's just them speaking their mind. It's no different than the very same folks that basically created an entire platform and income stream off of doing that to Disney, doing that to Marvel, right? Day in and day out, oh, Marvel is garbage. Disney is garbage. We're just going to rag on Star Wars over and over and over again. Are you gatekeeping Star Wars? Are you an elitist when it comes to Star Wars? No, you're simply speaking your mind. You want things to change because you have standards for those shows. Now, is it subjective? Of course. Everyone has different standards for everything, whether it's comics, films, dating, you name it. But again, there's no gatekeeping. The only ones that can gatekeep are the actual corporations and the management in those corporations. And I laugh when people use the term like the old guard. Since when were the artists working at DC and Marvel the guard? They were contracted to do work. They're employees. The guard would be those that hired them. It would be the ones in management. They're the ones owning the company, the ones that are setting the rules in order to join that company. So that's a completely misused term.
Yeah,
So,
I think the confusion for a lot of people lies in because you're using the phrase "there's no gatekeeping in indie comics," and that is correct. In the idea of indie comics, in the world of indie comics, you can do whatever you want anytime. The gatekeeping comes from institutions and groups. If Indiegogo decides they don't want you on your platform, they can gatekeep you out. That is freedom of association. The same thing if CG, Iron Age, whatever else, if a group of people don't want someone else in their group, that is gatekeeping. It's gatekeeping when you say, I don't want someone in my house. That's gatekeeping. But the idea of indie comics, anyone can make a book at any time and do it. Yeah, there's no gate. There's no one stopping you from doing that.
mhm.
So in violent comics, he had another one that says, I think I'm not 100%. You see what I'm talking about? That all manga uses AI for backgrounds and objects. Can you pull that one up real quick?
Let me find it here.
Because that's a point I would like to get to. I think it's near the bottom.
Ah, there we go.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you're saying this violent, but yeah, and they might, but there's a couple of things with that, and one of them is you probably we all probably have clothes that were made by child slave labor. That doesn't mean it's the same as having a slave yourself in your yard.
Mhm.
That's the best way I can put that argument. I'm not an artist, but if someone's using, SketchUp, Clip Studio to make art and they're doing it well, if AI was implemented by the subscriptions they have of that program, I don't know what to tell you. It's not the same to me as going to an AI site, inputting what you want, copying that, and throwing it on a page. Then again, I'm an ignorant non artist. What I'm saying is going back to the slave argument, just because my Jordans may be made by some kid in China is not the same as me having someone in my backyard that I have a chain around.
Mhm.
Intent does matter. And like, that's what really bugs me about this fear, if I'm being honest. What really bugs me is I don't know if it's ignorance or if it's like disingenuousness in a lot of arguments. And I stay out of arguments on
Mhm.
Twitter unless it's like something to do with like Snyderverse or religion, because those are fun to me.
Mhm.
But the indie sphere just seems to have that kind of argument a lot, because what we're basically having here is you're having EVS versus Ripaverse, basically.
Mhm.
People don't have to participate in that, and you don't have to let either one who's speaking their own idea, they have their own ideas, that's fine. You don't have to let those ideas define how you think. Now, if
Mm.
you think someone's more right or wrong, great. That's fine. But we can think outside of those ideas, because these are two guys that are busy working, doing their own stuff, that don't necessarily articulate their ideas all the time. But nobody does, you know? No one is perfectly articulate all the time. But again, I'll say this: Chuck Dixon making an AI comic book is not a great idea, especially coming off of the 3D assets debacle. If you are trying to claim quality and you've lost that argument, and now you're basically saying quantity, and then you're it's like, okay, well, how are you getting that quantity? Is it through AI? You're running out of straws, man. Like,
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
does that make sense?
Oh yeah. So let me pull up a tweet here. So there's a couple tweets that I think are kind of pertinent to this. And again, this is just stuff that obviously pops up in my feed that I think is relevant. It's not meant to target anyone or anything of that nature. But let me pull this one up here.
Violent. Yeah, I was addressing a thing you said. If I mischaracterized what you were saying, just correct me. That's fine. Because I wasn't attacking what you said.
All right. So this one was pretty interesting here. So this comes from Skullface here. So this, of course, was a branch of retweets and quote tweets and all of that from one of the tweets that Eric did that again mentioned gatekeeping, old guard, elitism, and all of that stuff. So Skullface essentially said Doug Ernst and Eric July both deride experienced creators because they have some gay vendetta. If I were a greenhorn and a veteran was giving me tips, start taking notes. Indie comics seem to be the only place that downplays experience. Writer circles don't do this. I will agree on his one statement there, right? That definitely in indie comics, um, experience does get downplayed quite a bit, and even talked down to, which is wild, um, especially since a lot of us have learned a lot from those that have more experience than us. It's actually, I mean, for me, if I wouldn't have gotten advice from several folks that had more experience than me, I wouldn't have had a successful campaign. I wouldn't be in the position I'm in right now. Now, it doesn't mean everyone with more experience or that was a professional always gives good advice, but again, they've been around the block and it's more likely that they have more tips and tricks that they can give you. Um, and then Tyler, Draw and Talk, responds and says, "That's not true. If given art advice from EBS, I'm sure they'd take notes. Note, but business advice, fulfillment advice, how to treat others, nah, EBS is not one to get that from." Well, business advice, I would say, well, he's making millions of dollars. He does seem to know what he's doing, especially when it comes to getting campaigns funded, raising a lot of money through eBay. He does know how to fulfill, right? He has an entire team with customer service and all of that. Now, timeliness does not equate to fulfillment. And again, that's a whole nother topic. But essentially, what this goes down to is where he brings in Shane. And this is where I think it gets interesting. So, Skullface says there's creators other than Ethan, but he always gets brought up. Again, that's, yeah, every time he gets brought up. Um, So there's Shane Davis, Graham Nolan, Andy Smith immediately come to mind. I know Ethan isn't friendly to everyone. And so this is one where I found that was just kind of funny and completely wrong. He says, I can't speak for others, but even Shane has a very gatekeeping mentality of because I'm a pro and was in the industry, I'm always right. And people I think he means to say, and people in the independent scene don't like that. And then Shane is on EBS's lap all the time. So I don't know how, even if he did believe he was right all the time, how was that gatekeeping?
Yeah, he's
That
not blocking
literally
any.
doesn't.
He doesn't have the power to block somebody out of an industry. Now, if you wanted to say maybe that's attacking, but even then it's like, well, it seems more like it's just criticism. Now, if he was actively trying to hurt someone, or I see, I don't believe in, like, I don't watch the long streams because I don't have time. I have kids. But if someone was deriding someone's personality or like physical, you know what I mean? Someone's actually attacking somebody, that's attacking. But somebody's opinion is somebody's opinion. I don't see how that's gatekeeping.
Right. And this is where I think a lot of people use the word gatekeeping improperly. He essentially means, in my opinion, Shane has very high standards and speaks his mind. And because of his experience, he believes he knows what is high quality work. And again, I think if you were to take Tyler and Shane, right, and ask yourself, who do you think would be a better judge of what is a high quality comic book? Who has the most experience? It would be Shane, right? He literally worked for the big two. He's worked on large titles such as Batman, and he is a top notch artist, whether you're talking the big two or you're talking the indie space. He knows what high quality art looks like. He knows how to make it. He also knows how to tell a proper, intriguing story. So, yeah, there's a good chance that he would be right on a lot of topics, and he is literally a pro. But how is he trying to stop anyone from creating comics? In fact, he brings tons of folks on his channel. He does a lot of promotion and things of that nature, which is literally the opposite of gatekeeping. So there's too many people just tossing that word around of, well, because your standards are so high that you believe a comic should have A and B qualities for art and that it should have this style of storytelling or it should have three-dimensional characters, all these different aspects that one could say are standards that he's gatekeeping. No, he's just simply saying that this is what I think is high quality, this is what I think is not high quality. But if that was someone who was brand new in the space, didn't have a following, didn't have a large YouTube channel, if they were to say the same things as Shane, well, I'll bet you that no one would bat an eye, even if it's the same opinion. It's just because, well, I think they want to piggyback off of his name, of course, so you can get engagement on tweets and all that. So, but
Yeah, and that was my point that I probably should have, or I should have spoken better of, like with when I was talking about EVS versus Rippaverse, is like big personalities tend to define the terminology being used. And nobody's perfect. However, somebody says something or means something, that gets misconstrued. You can't help it. It happens. But yeah, if someone like an ex-pro, they must know something about the craft. And like, but here's where it gets fuzzy, and this is why I'm trying to play a little bit of devil's advocate to this degree. I think that art at some level is objective and at some level is subjective. And you have someone like who draws like let's say Ethan Van Sciver, wonderful artist, right? And then you have books that come out like someone like Bill I never can say his name right, Sakaiskowicz, who did the
mhm,
new X-Men run or New Mutants run, I mean. He's also a wonderful artist, but his style is vastly different than what even at the time when he was there was considered good.
mhm,
It was more expressionist, and or at least the art he chose to draw in that style. I've seen his other work; it's fantastic as well. But you can't call him a bad artist. You might be like, I don't like that,
mhm,
and a lot of people, I think, probably even at the time didn't like it, and a lot of people did like it. His covers were controversial. Now they're classics,
mhm,
Just because you're an indie creator and a ex pro on their stream doesn't like your work or even derides your work, it may not necessarily mean you're a bad artist. It may mean their taste is different. They
mhm,
come from an older school of how they came from like the image days of how to do things, which was the peak of technical ability.
mhm,
But that doesn't mean that it basically if you either compete at that level or do something different and ignore it. If someone doesn't like your style, like my artist Josh is a fantastic artist, but he does not draw in the image style. And you know what I mean when I say image
mhm.
style.
Mhm.
and he doesn't want to. That's not what he grew up on. That's not his cup of tea. That's not mine either. I grew up on like stuff like Cerebus and Hellboy and that kind of stuff, or
Mhm.
Frank Miller, and he's more of a deconstructionist style now.
Mhm.
But if someone were to give our book a bad review based on the art, they didn't like it, it's like, okay, I know it's good. It doesn't matter if someone doesn't like it. And there might be some legitimate criticism. What you do with anything in life is you take the legitimate criticism, and if you feel some criticism is in bad faith, you shrug it off and get over it.
Mhm.
You don't run to
Yeah.
Twitter about it.
Yeah, and I think, this is a good point too by Eddie Crisis Design here. He says that Shane and other pros demand that creators at least respect the craft that
Yeah,
they spent a lifetime working in. And I agree. And that's the thing, that there's so many people, especially let's say new customers in the indie space that probably traditionally were not into comics, right? Where they just start bad mouthing and acting like, oh, these people, these pros are washed up and that, they don't know how to make comics and all that. And it's like, are you shitting me? That's like saying Scottie Pippen didn't know how to play basketball,
nice name
right?
drop.
If well, he's my favorite, but it's like, if they actually made it to the professional level, clearly they have skill, clearly they have talent, they know what they're doing. To say otherwise is it's not only an insult to them, it's an insult to the medium. And it's like the people that try to insult Frank Miller, for example. And I'm glad you brought him up. It's like, yeah, his style of art is not everyone's cup of tea.
Very
But
rough.
that right. But that man knows how to tell a story visually and verbally. I mean, he's a master of his craft. So if you were to say like, "Oh, because his style of art is not your cup of tea," and you start bashing him, would be it's a complete insult to the medium itself.
Yeah, and that go back and forth. I mean, there might be pros right now that aren't that great. I've seen some bad art in some DC books recently.
Oh yeah.
And you try to give people the benefit of the doubt, especially since I can't draw stick figures. Like, okay, maybe there was a time crunch, maybe they're overworked, maybe this is the style they told them to draw in. They tried to hamper Todd McFarlane for crying out loud, you know?
Hmm.
And ID Crisis Design is what he just said is there's a difference between style and competence. I mean, that's true. And I know that's also a thin line, and a lot of people will try to bullshit you. I mean, like I said, I come from a music background. If you can play three chords, you can play any Ramones song, but the Ramones were awesome. That doesn't mean the pop punk band that ripped them off is good. And I think I think that's the thing with indie comics. If you look at them, you can tell. We wouldn't have this discussion if people in their gut couldn't tell when someone was phoning it in.
Hmm.
Now, I think that's the crucial thing, and it's hard to have that conversation because we're not talking reason and logic here. We're talking instinct and we're talking like gut reaction.
Hmm.
But you can kind of tell. You can tell when something is just a titty book. You can tell when someone should have stuck to web comics.
Hmm.
And it's not mean to have an opinion on that. You don't be a dick about it, and you don't have like harassment campaigns like people claim have happened or whatever. Of course, like if that happens, that's awful. You shouldn't do that. But that's the difference between attacking, criticism, and gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is saying we don't want that here amongst ourselves. Critiquing is saying here's my opinion, and attacking is just being an asshole.
Hmm.
Those are three different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, and the one thing that you brought up that I wanted to touch on, and I think this plays the biggest part in all of this, is this wild conception that sales equate to quality.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people I've went back and forth with on Twitter, where they always say, "Oh well, it must be a high quality book if it made millions of dollars, or hundreds of thousands of dollars in crowdfunding." Right? It's like, no. Have you seen Captain Marvel? Right? There's plenty of films that have made buku bucks, but were legitimately not good. Right? The Flash, for example, it made hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it lost money, but right, if you were just to look at it as an outsider, like, oh, that's a lot in ticket sales, but that doesn't mean it's high quality. And I do think a lot of folks take issue with the fact that you have these new customers coming in that were not historical indie comic fans or backers, And then you have some of these new creators that were historically YouTube content creators coming in and acting like, oh, well, if the book has made X amount of dollars, it's great. The market has told everyone that this is a high quality project. But then they ignore the fact that, oh, well, book two, there was a massive drop off, right? Oh, and then there was a massive drop off to book three and book four or whatever titles that they have. But it's completely insane to say that, oh, it sold a lot, so it's high quality. How many low-priced consumer products are out there that get really high sales but are complete shit? End up having recalls, right? Look at cars, for example. There are a lot of low-priced cars that have a ton of issues, a ton of recalls that don't get continued later on because of it, or the company will end up getting bought out because of quality issues. Are you gonna say, "Oh, well, but it was a selling car in that year, that means it's high quality." Those 2
Yeah,
things are not the same.
I like to call this the grits problem. And for anybody who's not from the South, grits are basically ground up corn cob, like just ground corn, and they have zero nutritional value. But they became a staple dish because workers, slaves used to eat it because that's what people would feed each other because it filled your stomach and it made you think you weren't hungry anymore. Basically, you can die eating the stuff. It has zero nutritional value. It became a staple because people ate it because that's all they had. Now it's considered like a southern delicacy, but what you do is you cook it in grease and you drown it with butter. You don't really like the grits, you like the flavor of everything that's in it. Just
Mhm,
because tons of people scarf it down doesn't mean it has anything of value in it. Polenta, yeah, something like that.
mhm,
Polenta and grits are a little bit different violent, I think. But
mhm,
that could be Louisiana versus South in my head.
mhm.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like just because something is even ingrained in the culture, or if it sells a lot or moves a lot, doesn't mean anything.
Well, in a lot of cases, especially in the indie scene, right, where we've seen books that some may think are not up to snuff quality-wise, it's because they're hyped up. Hype
Yeah.
marketing makes the world of difference, especially in the indie space. Hype marketing is natural when it comes to the mainstream, right? They have decades of legacy characters and films and millions of dollars in a whole marketing department to hype things up. But when it comes to the indie space, very few of us have such resources, right? It's primarily the folks that come into the space with a pre-cultivated following or YouTube subscriber base. And so I think a lot of the pros and even non-pros, they see a book come in and there's a lot of issues with it, not up to the quality of the mainstream, like said creator said it would be. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, of course they're going to say, well, yeah, it just because it got high sales doesn't mean it's good. Just means, yeah, maybe your marketing was good, maybe your pitch was good. But again, those things do not equate to a high quality book. Um,
Well,
so
that's the
this is
thing. Like that's the new elite. That's the elitism on the other side. Is like how
mhm,
much did it sell? Well, that's the same. That's if you want to. If elitism is just going to be meet X standard or it's not good, that's all it is. And to me, elitism it has to do with institutions. Like the same thing with gatekeeping. And I think you made this distinction already at the beginning. It's like someone just because someone has an opinion, elitism is when they can like prevent you from being part of a group.
mhm.
Of an opinion, I don't know. I guess an opinion could be linked to elitism, but to me, it's really hard to have an elitist view of art because art is I don't know, art transcends human beings. Art isn't an academic study. If it is, you're doing art wrong. So I'm not trying to beat it down. It's just like I understand if someone feels something is in bad faith. I
Mhm.
understand if someone doesn't appreciate someone on a stream like tearing down a book. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to like that. That doesn't mean it's gatekeeping, and it doesn't mean it's necessarily attacking. It sounds to me it's mostly just criticism.
Yeah, and the one thing that I think some bystanders are not realizing is that criticisms are going to be, let's see how to phrase this. They're going to get put in the limelight when it's tied to anyone with a large following or that's famous, right? And followers of said people are going to amplify such opinions and criticisms more so. That's natural, right? Fans of certain politicians, fans of certain celebrities, right, that agree with said politicians or um, or celebrities are going to share said thoughts, right? They're also going to get more courage to speak their mind because, oh, well, that person has said it. So now I feel comfortable doing that. And that's what's happening, whether it's on like the CG side or the Rippaverse fan side, right? People are literally just amplifying each other's thoughts, feelings, and criticisms. And so it appears like it's this big wildfire, but really that's just the nature of the beast when you're famous. And let's be honest, when it comes to indie comics and YouTube, right? There are some folks that are considered famous, at least in my opinion. And so, yeah, things are going to get amplified, things are going to get put in the limelight. The problem is when folks say, oh, well, I'm the victim now because I'm receiving said criticism. But in a lot of cases, at least what we've witnessed, a lot of that criticism is legitimate. And I've seen a lot of tame criticism. I mean, even my own reviews that I've done just get called attacks and all this. And it's like, there's a big difference between an attack and just a basic criticism regarding story or art. There's just yeah, there's way too much gaslighting going on in the space. That's for sure. I agree with Zombie Boy in that regard.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I try to have a balanced perspective of some kind, just because I like art. I like artists. If you're good, I'll have you on the show. I've had you on the show. I've had Doug Ernst on the show. I've had Isaac, forgot his last name, on the show. 3 different people, 3 different backgrounds, 3 different artists. If you got good art, people know it in their gut, even if they don't like it. That's the thing, is like there are artists that I don't like their art, but I know they're good at what they do. And then there's artists where you like their stuff and you know it sucks. Like and that's fine. I'm a big Creed fan. Technically, they're great. I get it's a little sappy. I think that's okay. What isn't okay, I think, is the weirdness and the girliness kind of. I don't, and to just take offense at everything.
Mhm.
And you're gonna get criticized no matter what you do. No, if you do anything, you're gonna get criticized. My God, the crowd chose Judas over Jesus, or whatever his name, not Judas. The other one, Barabbas. They chose Barabbas over Jesus. That's
Mhm.
gonna happen.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too there are folks that do enter spaces and they do want instant validation, especially if they're already in a space where they're well known and they've gotten said validation, whether it's music or YouTube or whatever. So yeah, if they come into the space and they make a lot of money, then they want to be considered like top level or pro or whatever. But again, if the quality of their work isn't up to the standard of a lot of the readers or the folks that are actually pros that have a lifetime experience, then I mean, don't be surprised when you get critiqued on how you respond. And I think it's like when it comes to me in the indie space, like I don't ever care if I'm considered a pro. I don't care if I ever make the mainstream. I just care if people love my story or not. I would rather my story be known, the name of my story, than my actual name. I want my story to be praised,
Mhm.
not me as a creator. But I think some folks want the opposite, right? They want to be praised as the creator, as accomplishing X, Y, and Z versus the story being praised and getting accolades. Um, so here's another tweet I think is quite pertinent, and this is back in 2019, and this is from Eric July. So, and again, this ties into the whole using the word elitist. So it says, I'm not some comic book elitist. If you don't really read comics and you just enjoy merchandise and television depictions of a character, that's completely fine. But don't front when the actual nerds take issue with inaccuracies.
I'm laughing because you're so well spoken in your reading an Eric July tweet. It's like a Simpsons bit.
Yeah, I didn't add the hibbity jibbity. It's tempting.
You have no
Um,
jive, Turner.
uh, but that last sentence there is perfect when we're talking about the indie comic space. And this is exactly what happened with his books. When he came in with his books, people, the nerds, right? The indie comic backers that have been in the space for 10 plus years, they've spent thousands of dollars. They looked at some of his books and said, there are some inaccuracies, in my opinion. There are things that do not line up with my standards when it comes to storytelling and art. And they let their voice be heard. They did exactly what he said right here, right? Don't front. Don't be surprised when nerds, right, the traditional customers, actually take issue with your content. And I think what his tweet was stemming from was right the big rush for comic book movies and TV series where folks came into the space. They loved comic book characters because of film and TV adaptations, and they didn't take issue with, let's say, when there wasn't things didn't line up with canon in films, right? Films didn't go directly off comic book scripts. So let's say Snyder first, for example, right? It's not a copy and paste adaptation of a comic book. And so folks like Eric and others, they took issues with that, right? The FNT crowd and all of that. They would complain that, oh, well, the character didn't look this way, or the character wasn't depicted this way, or oh, Superman killed Zod. Like, oh my God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's saying, well, don't be surprised if folks come in and complain and criticize said movies for those things happening. That's exactly what is happening in the indie space. He came in, he created comics his way, he told stories his way, and comic book nerds came in and said, I don't like how you did it. I'm going to tell you why. So there should be no issue. And it's not them being elitist, right? Because he's saying he's not an elitist, right? And they're not gatekeeping him. Nobody is saying he should not be allowed to make comics. They're just saying, hey, these books are not up to my standards. This is why. And of course, things are getting amplified because you have folks with big following, such as Shane and EVS with similar opinions. And obviously, when they spoke their minds, a lot of other people came out of the woodwork and were like, well, now we're not afraid to speak our mind, which is natural. And then it grows from there essentially. But that statement there is absolutely perfect. And it proves that it's not that any of us are elitists. It's just that we have our own set of standards and we're willing to speak our mind when such things don't meet our standards. And if we're elitists, then all the folks that complain about Disney nonstop and Star Wars and Marvel and all those films, well, then they're elitist as well.
Yeah, there's not an agreed on standard, and the goalposts keep shifting. And that's the thing is like I understand if someone is arguing something in bad faith. Like I understand, and that's the thing. We can go back in time a little bit, and Violent Comics just brought it up a little bit. When I first saw like the Dick Masterson and Eric July debate, I it was a weird feeling because it's like Dick does come off as bad faith because he's loud and obnoxious, but that's his whole bit. But his complaints were valid artistic complaints. I think his delivery was probably really awful, and I don't condone bad faith argumentation. Like if someone's attacking someone, again, that's different from criticism. That's different from gatekeeping. But it's again, it's like this really weird gut feeling when you're seeing like YouTubers who have never made anything, and there are some YouTubers who have made things before, trying to make something like comics, and they spent their whole career basically telling people they could do it better. And then you drop the ball, and it's like, well, you didn't. You kind of conned people in a way because you promised you could do better, and then you didn't. So that's either extreme incompetence or a straight con. And I'm not saying either way for Eric July because I don't know the man's heart, but ISOM 1 was either extreme incompetence or a con. That's just it. And while I didn't necessarily agree with his methods, Dick Masterson did do a good job pointing that out. Whether it was the best way to do it, he did point that out.
Yeah, and I brought up violent comics
Yeah.
comment here. Yeah, a lot of folks supported Eric July initially, right? They were actually hoping that he would actually perform,
Yeah, I
right?
was
That
going to
he would
buy it until
actually.
I saw the price.
Well, I mean, for me, it was the art, the cover art to me, and the character designs just didn't do anything for me. It just
Yeah.
looked way too generic and lifeless for me to take 35 or whatever dollars it was and
It was like something like 50 or 60 with shipping by the end. I
shipping.
remember that because I was like, I'm not doing that.
Right. And so for me, it was like, do I buy his book just to because he's a big name and because everyone's cheering him on? Or do I take that money and get one or two indie comics from folks that really need the money just to make it happen? Right. There was a
Yeah.
big difference between traditional indies and Eric. Eric had hundreds of thousands of dollars, disposable income, sitting there ready to produce the best comic in the world. And then you have
Yeah.
folks that, well, I'm not even going to be able to bring my project to life if I don't raise this money. So I
Yeah.
decided to back smaller creators.
You made the right
And,
choice.
you know, the thing is, a lot of people want to give them the benefit of the doubt, though, right? And I think generally most, if not all indies get that benefit of the doubt where it's like folks are like, okay, you're new. Okay, your first one may not be a banger, but if you're supporting the community, if you're promoting other people, if you're willing to learn and improve over time, no one will take issue with that. Maybe folks won't rant and rave about your end product, but if you're trying to lift up the entire community, no one's going to bat an eye. They're going to keep cheering you on. But we saw this like heel turn where it's like, oh yeah, he's part of the indie community. Everyone's thinking, oh, he's going to promote other people. He's going to be like some of the big names in Comicsgate, and it's going to feel more supportive as a whole. He's going to bring in new readers. He's going to direct those readers to other projects, but that didn't happen. And it was apparent that he had no interest in that happening either. And yeah, of course, that burned a lot of small indie creators because it's like, well, hey, all of us retweeted your book. All of us lifted you up, cheered you on, but then you don't want to do that for anybody. And it's not like, hey, you have to promote me or anything like that. It's just the idea of the whole community. Everybody supported you. I mean, don't you want to give back a little? I mean, like you said, we even have folks like Mark Millar that are every once in a while saying, hey, I backed this project on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Go check it out. Praising some of the indie folks. Like that's fantastic. That's what we need more of is that. And so I think that coddling of him started to go away. More and more people spoke up. And again, when you're well known or you're famous in a space, those voices are just going to get amplified and that message or those feelings are just going to get shared and it's going to spread, especially over time. And so and then here we are now, right? How things have evolved.
Yeah, that's a lot of it, man. A lot of stuff. It just seems like we don't have to comment on everything. You don't have to take everything personal. I guess what hurts my heart is we're all trying to sell stuff. I get it, but you don't have to put money over art. And you start seeing people, and you can tell everything's engagement farming. Like
Mhm.
everything's about that, even when it's like the most like quote unquote well-meaning thing. It's all about that, and it's not about art. And hey, if you're about money, just say it. That's fine. Todd McFarlane said it in like 1990. Like he said, I would have stayed with DC if they'd have paid me 80 grand a year, or Marvel, whoever he was with at the time. I think it was Marvel. And at least he was like, hey, I had pivoted to toys and I pivoted to video games because comics weren't selling anymore. I think if you're honest about that, that's fine. But I think a lot of what we're expressing is it's just that gut feeling. People know.
Mhm.
And you can't run from that. You can't talk over that. You can't tweet over that. And it sucks that words like gatekeeping and elitism, it's always a topic. It's always a topic. Like what it is you're feeling in your soul that something is not aligning with like the divine nature of reality. And that's
Mhm.
not to get heady. It's just you just know when you see something that's not right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
all you
and
can do is strive to make that right.
mhm. Yeah, and then Violent Comics says here, I think Eric July got most of his sales after he got on Fox News and other platforms to promote his book. Ethan was pissed that he only sold his book and he didn't talk about the Comicsgate community. Yeah, I mean, obviously getting on Fox News and other platforms is huge. It's going to boost anyone's sales. And yeah, Ethan may have been pissed about that. I was as well. I think most of the folks in Comicsgate were, because Comicsgate really, really cheerleaded for him. They really helped get him sales. He was on a lot of folks' streams. Everyone was pushing retweets and promoting him. I mean, it at the moment it was really cool, right? I liked seeing that happen. But then again, after the success, then it's like, oh, he doesn't want to. It doesn't seem like he wants to lift up all the folks that helped him. It's like, well, that kind of goes against, at least for CG, what CG is about, right? A lot of it's about, hey, let's help each other out. Let's lift up the group. Let's lift up creators. And so when you see that, hey, they aren't doing that, but we help them out, it's like, well, why would I continue to help them? And there was another comment, again about let's see, he said something about folks who are supporting a bad artist and focusing on the community instead. I mean, I didn't support him in the sense that I didn't back his campaigns, but I didn't speak out against him because I naturally don't do that. If the person hasn't done anything against the indie community, hasn't insulted folks, right? Haven't called folks in the space elitists or saying that they're gatekeeping others, that's just not in my nature. But I will pull up tweets like this and make some comments because I do think that it's relative to the main topics that are going on in indie space. And there are some creators that are making an impact, whether positive or negative, on the indie space. And I won't pull it up right now. I could do a separate video on it, but he did a video on the topic of gatekeeping a couple times in the past.
Yeah.
One specifically where he said that gatekeeping can be good. And he was saying that when it comes to fandoms, that if folks come into the space with bad ideas, bad intentions, and are poisoning the well, that they should be called out and people should make them feel as uncomfortable as possible. That's also ironic because I do think that's essentially what has happened. There's a lot of people that are like, well, his narratives around crowdfunding, the comments he's made about late books and this, that, and the other, we think it's bad for the space. We think it's poisoning the well. It could be monetizing your haters, and again, there's a lot of examples where folks could have the opinion that, hey, I don't think this person or the things that they say or do is good for the space. I think they're poisoning the well, so I'm going to speak up. Some just speak up, provide criticisms, speak their mind, and that's it. Others may be trying to make them feel uncomfortable, which is ironic given the statement that he made in that video. So I think a lot of things that he's said that you should do to the mainstream fandoms and spaces are now happening to him, and he can't necessarily handle it. But again, his platform, a lot of these platforms, they were built up on criticizing creators, companies, you name it. So I think it just comes with the territory at this point, especially when you're a big name.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate part of fame is rocks get thrown at you. But I mean, but that is what it is, you know. What are you supposed to do with it? Um, I don't care what two grown or three or four grown men think about each other. You know, that doesn't change how I buy books or how I view art.
Mhm,
And if that is how people buy art, I hey, I don't think you're interacting with art properly. But again, I understand that there's groups involved, and those groups, hopefully everyone is there because they love art. Like CG, I don't even know what the groups are anymore. I guess Ripperverse, I guess CG Ripperverse are groups, and like I guess Iconic is their own thing now. It doesn't matter. I understand people of different groups not liking how other groups do things. That's gatekeeping. That's fine. Like if someone like if enough people in one group say, let's say CG says, "Hey, we don't like how X person treats people. We don't want to buy his stuff." Fine. That's not attacking, that's gatekeeping, but and that's not elitism. Those are three or four different things. I think what you just pointed out is when you keep stirring the pot, when you keep agitating, when you keep kicking a hornet's nest, no matter who you are, you're going to get flack. And people, I think, can smell bullshit of when someone kicks up flack just to monetize it.
mhm,
And that's something I'll applaud you for, BA. I've seen you in debates and stuff. I've seen you do things. I've never seen you stir up something to monetize it. I've seen you react to things such as this.
mhm.
And I think, hey, that's what open game is for. But I've never seen you cause trouble to monetize trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, I want to grow my channel. I want to get more sales and all that. But for me, the main focus is just talking about things that are relevant in the space, and especially around things that can influence backers, that can influence readers, and calling others elitists, saying that there's gatekeeping and all of that definitely can influence current backers and potential backers. And
Mm-hmm. Where everybody's playing a victim narrative.
mhm,
There
yeah,
are people um who are like, "Oh, I'm blocked out of the mainstream. I'm a victim." There are people I'm blocked out of CG. I'm a victim. There are people I'm blocked out of X group. I'm a victim, and that's what this a lot of this is. It's like elite is getting redefined. Are you elite because you sold more? Are you elite because you draw better?
mhm,
And that's the thing. But that's a both sides things. People are claiming the elite title. I'm sorry, the elite people are claiming the victim title because of elitism, and people are claiming the elite title because of victimization.
yeah.
And that's where the terms are getting so confused and so weird. Instead of just being like, you know what, I'm working on my art. If someone doesn't like it, if someone has a valid criticism, I'm going to make it better. I think somebody just posted this. So I'm a vicious chat reader because I think chat's important. Wyatt Eastman said they want to be Eddie Van Halen, great reference, without learning to play the guitar. They want the earned validation and respect without having a body of work that would make it undeniable. There's no shortcuts to the top. I absolutely agree. And again, I'm not blowing smoke up his butt because I'm on his stream, but I learned about BA because he put out books. They were there. It's like, okay, this guy's established himself. They like look quality, and they are quality. That's the thing. That's why we put out 3 books in a year. I agree with you. We don't have no one in any sphere has the money to to hire what is it like Mexican artists in a factory or whatever to put out 3D assets and then claim the book is wonderful.
Mhm.
That's what happened with Ripperverse. The guy, I don't know Eric July personally. I don't know his heart. I don't wish him any ill at all. But you don't talk smack for years about an industry and then screw up your first step into it that badly.
Well, and see, that was my biggest issue with the whole thing was that he did come into the space again with it was either 200 or $300,000. I mean,
Mhm.
it's also weird to publicly say I have this much money to invest in something. but he did that, right? It was known. So, of course, the whole indie space is like, okay, you literally have the resources and obviously the connections to make the best book possible. There is no excuse for it to not meet or exceed the quality of current mainstream books. Absolutely no excuse, right? You're already linked with pros that are in the indie space. I'm sure he was already linked with folks in the mainstream. I mean, clearly he's hired some of them, right? And then you have hundreds of thousands of dollars. So many of us with just 20,000 or $50,000 could get a book filled with the most gorgeous art possible. And we are seeing folks doing that with
Hmm.
minimal resources. So, yes, a lot of the pros in this space and non-pros had the expectation that like, hey, this book must be amazing. It has to be. And so they had high expectations. So when those expectations weren't met, they spoke out. But I don't understand how that how he fumbled it so hard, right? He could have hired he could have hired someone like Joe Bennett right out the gate. I don't
Anybody,
know why
literally
he went
anybody.
I don't know why he went with Cliff Richards. I don't know why he went with Glass House at all, right? I don't know why he needed to work with a company based out of Brazil. Again,
Brazil, not
there
Mexico. Sorry.
right? But there's so many folks already in the indie space or that he could have pulled from the mainstream that were just as talented or much more talented. Um, he also could have hired a writer to just co-write it. But for some reason, like he had to have, in my opinion, his name on it. It had to be all highlighting his name when he could have at any moment reached out to Chuck or Mike Barron and said, "Hey, I want you to co-write this with me. I'm new to this. I need you to show me the ropes. Can you help me out?" Right? That way they could have fixed a lot of the inconsistencies and issues. But the other thing too is just the creative aspect of it, right? When you look at the character designs, the powers of the characters, the lore of the characters, it's underwhelming compared to obviously legacy mainstream characters and even a lot of the indie projects. If he really wanted to beat the mainstream or embarrass the mainstream, whatever, he would have consulted with some pros and said, "Hey, what do you think about this character design?" He would have gotten a couple opinions, and then he would have taken that feedback and made modifications. He would have gave the script to a couple folks, and then he would have made modifications. Maybe he would have scrapped some characters. I don't know. But it's like he was set in his mind that I know that these are the best they can be. Like these are good enough. Like I know they're good enough. And so when people had that impression that that was his mindset, then yeah, of course, when folks were not impressed by the works, then this is a big result of it. And a lot of folks didn't speak up, but a couple loud voices definitely gave some folks the courage to speak up. And it also made folks look at it more closely and be like, you know what? This stuff is right. It's no different than when those same people highlight, hey, this happened in this Star Wars movie. What the heck? This doesn't make any sense. This is garbage. And then everyone's like, holy shit, you're right. And then they start parroting it and they start making videos and it grows and grows and grows. Same thing happened in indie space. Someone with a following said, hey, look at this. We recognize this. And then more and more people spoke out and said the same thing. So,
It-
it just doesn't make any sense with that amount of resources and connections. Man, I would have had someone on the level of Dale Keown working on this. I would have tossed money because he knew he could make millions. He knew he had the audience. You could have overpaid someone and enticed them so much to work for you. But instead of getting someone on that level, like you went with this company out of Brazil.
yeah,
And wouldn't
that's
you want to lift up the indie community versus some company in a foreign country?
Well,
And
that's
then
and
it just it
we're
makes
and
you
we're
sad.
getting off topic, and that's fine because this all ties together. This it's like a
Mhm,
big circle conversation that keeps happening. But you've brought up some great points with that ties back into even your video on quality versus quantity. Basically, I forgot the
mhm,
official title.
mhm,
Like here's the thing, and I'm not. This isn't a plug, but this is how we understand this. And yeah, Joe, that's a good point. I personally prefer EVH, yeah, EVH, because Eddie Van Halen is unmatched, but Dimebag was a fantastic guitarist as well. Um, we studied the indie sphere while Josh was creating our first book for a year, and we saw two marketing means of marketing, and I don't mean that cynically. It's just how it is. We saw and for lack of a better word, we saw, and stay with me, everybody. I'm not causing a dichotomy or a drama here. We saw CG and we saw iconic, and we saw that strictly through marketing lens. CG had pros, ex pros, and current pros that could take time and do a book the way they wanted to because they had names, and that's fine. And we saw iconic who were known for putting out things very quickly and satisfying their customers that way. We went with the second method as far as finishing books before they were funded because we did not have names. That is a great method for young indie comics. Guys, if you don't have a name, you got to play by the rules of like certain market rules. That's just how you have to do. Eric July did not have to do that. And he's really leaned into like the quantity method. It's like, man, you had a huge audience. If you'd have hired a pro, an ex pro, whatever, someone of that level to make a book, if you made one book a year, one or two, one book every 3 years, you'd have that audience. You did not have to take this wild dichotomy of quantity over quality. And I don't think that exists. I think you can put things out quickly of quality, as Jack Kirby and Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee proved for years. If you are an ex pro, such as EVS or Shane Davis, you're basically retired. You can do whatever you want. Take as much time as you want to finish your book.
mhm.
Make it your passion project. I don't care. But that's the weird thing of people split this in half, quality versus quantity. You can have both. Those guys proved that they could do both back in their 20s and 30s when they were pros. They were doing it. They know how to do it. They just don't want to, and that's fine. They can take their passion project as long as they want, and if their fans want it, whatever. But Eric July could have done the same thing and not have made that first Ice on book, which was basically toilet paper.
Yeah, and the problem too is that a lot of, again, the new fans that came in tied to the Rippaverse that were
Mm-hmm.
not historic comic fans or indie comic fans, they don't realize when someone's drawing the book themselves and
Mm-hmm.
writing it and commissioning coloring and lettering and
Oh,
all of
it's a
that,
huge job, massive job.
it takes a long time to make a comic versus when you can just outsource all of the aspects and you can have this artist on book A, you can have this artist on book B,
Mm-hmm.
this artist on book C. Of course, you can push quantity, especially when the money is there. But the regular indie creator, A, doesn't have that money just sitting in the bank, and
Mm-hmm.
B, they're not going to be able to commission several projects at the same time because the said money is not there. And the other thing too is you're competing for those artists' time. Artists on book A might also be working on 2 or 3 other books,
Yeah.
right? So you're competing with the other artists' time, and you can't force your artist to work faster, and you definitely don't want to sacrifice quality in doing so. So yeah, when you have all those resources, it's easy to push quantity. And going back to your one point, and I mean the original point of kind of this section was that right when he had all those resources, he had the ability to hire top-notch artists. He could have made a phenomenal book. He could have consulted people on every level, and then he would have made crazy money, right? Maybe he would have retained the same sales numbers in book 2, or at least would have had a much smaller drop off, right? Then he could have expanded and say, hey, let's commission several artists and all that. But he had to scramble because of that huge drop off in backers. But he had the resources to literally create the best book possible to secure stable sales over time, but that didn't happen. This is wanted to highlight this comment. So Divinity Comics says, was he making a book for all of us, or was he making the book for his fans? I don't think he knew what his fans wanted. His fans are fans of music and libertarianism, right? Some of them were fans of comics, but they're fans of, Spider-Man, Batman, and some legacy characters that have some amazing storytelling and lore tied to them. ISOM does not have that. I mean, so yeah, I think he was just making a book for him, and he knew that he was going to be able to get sales regardless. I think if he was actually trying to make a book for comic fans, then again, he would have taken the steps to get the best artist possible. He would have consulted with other writers and he would have approached things differently. And it would have worked out for him in the long run. He would have avoided all the criticism, right? If he would have put out a book to the quality level of Cyberfrog, of Inglorious Rex, he wouldn't have faced much criticism at all. People would have had to have severely nitpicked in order to get their criticism highlighted. So this is a huge lesson for new indie creators. Take your damn time and be a perfectionist because otherwise, I mean, even on a smaller level, you're going to get the same criticism and you're going to deal with similar things in the indie community because that's just the nature of the indie community, unfortunately. But again, he had the chance to really wow the comic book community. And I don't think he tailored his book for the comic book community, unfortunately. But there's a lesson to be learned for all of us. And I'm glad I read ISOM 1 specifically because it taught me what not to do.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And it reaffirmed my stance that I'm not going to write my first comic issue by myself. I've written novels, but writing a comic book is completely different. And so I am going to team up. I am teaming up with another writer that has the experience that can help me and that can make sure that this book is the best possible so that I am not in the same situation when I'm producing book 2, book 3, etc. So there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from that whole situation.
Oh yeah. And to address I think it was Divinity Comics said something about the CG mentality of pros. When I say pros, I'm referring to someone who is a good artist. I don't care if they work for Marvel or DC. Working for Marvel or DC in some ways would guarantee that they're at least better than the average, if not pro. That goes back to the whole like the punk idea we're talking about. Like the whole idea of democratization is that you can make something awesome and cool that may be technically different. I love Cerebus, Dave Sims. He was not what you would call like a wonderful creator, at least when he started. And then he hired a magnificent background artist and he stuck to what he was good at. Um, I'm a huge Grendel fan. Matt Wagner is a good artist. He's not on the level of Jim Lee that we would consider. You know what I mean? You can make something that is awesome that is not technically proficient as somebody else. But what you can't do is just drop the ball so badly. That's the whole point. Is my problem with I Someone is that it had no technical or artistic merit in its art. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't unique. It was literal 3D assets thrown on a page by someone who did not care or know enough about art to put out a good book. Like I said, it was either incompetence or apathy.
Or
That
just cockiness, right? Like, I know what I'm doing. I have this in the bag, right? I've been reading comics for 20 years, so I know how to write a comic. Maybe that's the
yeah.
case. I don't know. But that's like someone had made the comment earlier, which was applicable to the whole. A lot of our discussion was, folks like FNT, right? They don't know the movie industry. They've never worked on it. They do not rely on it. but a lot of people actually view them as like experts. No, an expert would be someone like Ben Affleck, who has actually acted in films, who's actually directed films, that knows how they're produced. They know everything that happens behind the scenes. Those are experts. And it'd be funny if folks are like, "Oh, well, Ben Affleck is an elitist because he's saying that this indie film is not of high quality." It's like, no, he's an expert. There's a big difference. Um, I wanted to highlight this one comment. So I think Andrew is probably referring to, if Eric was to lift up the indie community, it could take money off of his table potentially. But and see, I personally don't have that mindset. I think that that could be a possibility of why he didn't want to promote other books, because there's a chance that some of these other books that raise less money could be of higher quality, and it could kind of show those readers like, oh, maybe his book was not as good as it could have been. Um, may have taken some of that validation away from him. I don't want to have that approach. I won't have that approach. I will promote folks like Shane Davis, right? I know that his books are high quality, and I'm not going to view it as, well, oh, if I promote his book, then maybe people will back his book instead of mine. I'd rather have the thinking of, hey, folks are always looking for more content. They want more books. There's always periods or gaps where they're waiting for deliveries on certain campaigns where they're looking for something new. And if you go in demand, there's plenty of time for you to pick up the same backer that Shane picked up, for example.
Mhm.
And I think if he would have had more of this approach of, hey, I'm going to promote others, that concept and the way that people viewed him would have spread a lot quicker than the criticism, and it would have even have balanced it out in a sense, because then those creators that he promoted would also promote him. And again, even if you pick up 5 backers from a small creator, again, you do that 100 times, or you pick up 500 backers from an EBS or something of that nature, that can equate to a lot of money, and that's also retention when it comes to, going from issue after issue in your universe. So yeah, I just believe in that you lift up others. There's a good chance that people are going to lift you up, and that you're going to grow and they're going to grow. I'd rather everybody grow than just sit there and try to hoard backers or something. I want backers to get more stories. I can't do 12 issues a year. I cannot provide people with enough content to keep them busy year round. Nobody can, unless it's Marvel and DC, right? And you're happy with their content. So this concept of like, oh well, it could take, money off my table. Well, if your books are top notch, people are going to buy it. They're going to choose your book. So if you're worried about people not backing your book, then you're actually second guessing the quality of your own book, which is not good. You should be thinking, hey, it's so good that people are going to pick it up. So I shouldn't be afraid of promoting other people's books.
Oh yeah, especially if you know you're doing something different, and that's kind of an advantage you also had. You were selling novels,
Mhm.
which was a great idea. And like again, I've told you this before, and I've said it before, and I mean it. Like we saw what you were doing. We're like, well, man, because I wrote a novel about 4 years ago that started the Godfo universe before we even had the first comics, but we didn't know what to do with it. And then we saw this guy. We saw you come out of nowhere. It's like, oh, this guy started with the novels, and then he's going to comics. I was like, well, I didn't think that was possible. But that's the thing is, you, even when you put out your book, you're not going to feel a certain type of competition if you know it first. Like I said, basically one of two extremes and meeting in the middle. There's technical perfection, which is what you're going in with the artists you've hired. You got professional artists, and I mean professional as in good, or you've got something that is different or creative in a different way, and that's fine. If you don't have either of those things or a blend of those things, you've got nothing. What do you have? I love the Beatles and I love Steve Vai. Those are two different guys. I love Bob Dylan and I love Eddie Van Halen. Two completely different types of musicians. That doesn't mean it's subjective. It means they are objectively good in different ways.
Mhm.
So that's my mentality with the idea of the gatekeeping and elitism. Some people will cling to the elitism of numbers. Some will cling to the elitism of viewing someone because they used to work somewhere.
Mhm,
And it doesn't, and people will view themselves as victims of both of those categories. Let it go.
mhm,
Like, it doesn't, people, I'm going to say this, the people making the art don't really matter. Is the art good?
mhm,
Is it good in a technical way? Is it good in an interesting way? Is it good in both ways? Speaking, I'm now sounding like such a music nerd. Speaking of Eddie Van Halen, the man had technical prowess out the wazoo and was so unbelievably creative. He invented scales unto himself.
mhm,
That's a great, and Prince was the same way. Prince was technically talented, better than anybody, and so a creative force of nature, no one could slow him down. That's the dichotomy I'm trying to break Divinity Comics when I'm talking about. I don't see prose as someone who works somewhere. I see prose as someone who's good. The
mhm,
problem I had with ISOM 1, it was neither technically nor artistically proficient nor a blend of any of them.
mhm.
That's
Well,
what
the
I
thing,
don't have time for.
well, in this whole comment here about I don't think hiring pros will produce quality indie content. Most people are not getting to commission pros in the indie space. Why? Because the pros are too busy working on their own books,
Yeah.
right? So, what a lot of the pros are providing for the space are new backers, right? They're providing platforms, they're spreading the word, they're giving people a chance for their books to be seen. It's networking. They're providing networking opportunities and they're bringing their readers into the space. That's a huge help for the space. I know that I've gotten a lot of backers as a result of those pros bringing backers into the space and then showing those backers my books. So of course I appreciate them. I think that's fantastic for the space. And then he says the CG mentality that pros are the answer has not translated to more readers. Since the pros entered CG, your membership has declined. No, I don't think that's because of the pros entering CG. I think that's just the nature of groups having fallout. It happens in every space, in every medium. You're going to have personalities that don't click. You're going to have people that are scorned. You're going to have just natural disagreements. So that just happens over time. And the thing is, if that's the case, then why is Eric, for example, hiring pros, right? Chuck,
Yeah,
Mike, Joe,
I saw someone
you
make
name it.
that point. Is like you're claiming elitism, but you're hiring like comic like ex pros. I don't remember
Exactly.
where I read that, but I was like, that's a pretty okay point actually.
I know it's weird to, in my opinion, take shots at pros, just in this general, way, like, oh, as if pros is a has a negative connotation to it these days. And it's like, but your team consists of several pros. You
And
keep hiring more pros,
selling them as pros.
right? And you keep marketing, on the concept that you
Hmm.
have pros.
You're trying to be indie and professional at the same time.
Hmm. And yes, I do think if I were to hire or were able to hire some of these pros, my sales would go up, of course, because their backers are likely going to get their eyes on my book and they'll want to back my book because said person is tied to it. Even on a smaller level, I had a lot of backers back my book simply because they like Corey Barton and they like his art, and justifiably so. Same for Joe Ball, right?
Hmm.
That's part of the networking aspect. The name can sell. Eric is proof of that. Names sell. That's why his books have sold the way they have, is simply because of names, is primarily.
Oh yeah, I mean that's probably behind the hiring of various YouTubers now within the same universe.
Yep.
Um, Eric Hutfels, I'll admit that I don't know the history of CG. That's fine.
Mhm.
If that's a requirement to be here, just go ahead and
No,
kick me out. I don't know the
no.
history. I barely know the history of my own state.
No, no, Eric, I think he's just simply, trying to
Yeah,
tell Divinity Comics, right? Like, there's a
I'm just
lot
yeah.
behind Comicsgate. There were folks that were not pros that played a part in initiating it, and then it, of course, grew and got a lot more.
Mhm.
recognition once the pros started to join. And this Violent Comics, I'm glad he brought this up. He said, I think Eric saw Ethan make millions with his first comic and got outside investors to try to manufacture sales. I I can't say in regards to the outside investors and manufacturing sales, but I do think he saw a window of opportunity, just like a lot of small creators, right? They checked out Indiegogo. They started seeing these indie creators like, holy crap, they're making 20, 50, $100,000, right? In a lot of cases, they're not realizing, right, the real margins, right? Once you take out costs of printing and shipping, all of that. But I do believe that he saw a window of opportunity. He's like, man, Ethan, all these guys, they're making millions of dollars. I got this huge audience. I have an audience where some of them read comics. Like, I should, now's the time. And that's where I think a lot of folks in CG felt burned a bit, because it's like, hey, CG and other big indie creators literally laid the groundwork, 5 years ago, right? By having all the success, it provided all these potential backers, and it basically just exposed everyone to crowdfunding comics, and it provided an ample opportunity for folks like myself and himself to come in, get books funded, or make a lot of money off of comics. And I would hope that he's appreciative towards folks like EBS and all that, that brought all this attention to indie comics, that raised all this money so that it could be a viable business opportunity for him.
Yeah, and you can recognize, speaking with the drama between the two of them, if you can recognize what someone did without liking someone or even publicly admonishing them, you can at least admit like what someone was a part of or what someone did. You know,
Mhm.
I don't think that. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Mark Millar's work. Like, I get nothing against the guy, but I applaud him for what he did with this. Whenever like the indie shop, especially stuff happened, he got right in there. It was like, whoa, let's figure out why people are attacking comic shops, and he started promoting indie comics and stuff. Um, I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people just take things super seriously, and I get it. I mean, I get the Eric and Dick situation because Dick is a dick. That's the whole point. It's his whole selling point. But it also could have like a 90% of it was like, hey Eric, you can just be like, hey Dick, thanks for your comments. Sorry you didn't like the book. How's like the mustache going? Do you know, like you could have taken it in stride. It really was that idea of like, I don't know, to me it was like a big blessing for the indie comics community of like how not to take insults, how not to make a book, and how not to take insults. And again, if someone does help you, and even if you have a falling out, you can, I don't know, there's part of, I think, I sound like such a hippie, I know, but I'm not. It sucks that business eats away at the human soul like that and human decency like that. If someone helped you, you don't, and you had a falling out, you can still be like, hey, someone laid the groundwork that I am now building on. I'm standing on the shoulder of another giant, and I am maybe surpassing them in sales or whatever. But and I may not like them, they may not attack me, but this person did X great thing. That probably goes a long way, I would guess. And if it doesn't, shake it off. If someone is like still doesn't like you or whatever, who cares? Like I don't know. Like I don't I do think there's a lot to it's a big complicated issue, man, and I don't like stirring the pot if I don't have to, but there's a lot of weird entitlement that comes with the democratization of art, that comes with the destruction of great gatekeeping and elitism, if we have to say that. When everything is a super level playing field and everything's just subjective, everything's just taste, you're gonna get a lot of crap. You're just gonna get a lot of crap made. And not only with that, you're going to get a lot of people thinking that because it's a quote unquote level ground, that their crap is good.
Well, the thing too is, with the whole Dick Masterson situation, was that a big reason why that whole situation went down was because of hype marketing. You had
Yeah.
a lot of popular YouTubers just pushing the book, and it turned out most of them had not read it or didn't understand the book. And all he did was highlight the fact that, hey, you guys are pushing a book acting as if it's the next big thing, but you haven't even read it.
Mhm.
Like, prove to me it's good. So he saw that as an opportunity of like, oh man, this is like content gold, right? Because there were so many YouTubers just pushing it blindly. And again, it'd be different if those YouTubers were pushing like, "Oh my god, this has Dale Keown art. Look, it's got Mike Barron on it or something." Then there would be some justification behind the hype. No
Mhm.
different than if mainstream were to release a book saying, "Oh, Silvestri or someone's tied to it." Then, oh yeah, it's going to get hyped up and justifiably so. But that's not the case. They were just pushing it to push it, and there was really no content behind the push other than just like, "Oh, it's made this amount of money. Everyone should go buy it."
Yeah, and
Um,
and and to go with that, like Mindy, what does it matter if Eric's fans or comic fans or not? I don't care if I don't care about Eric's fans. I'm not gonna rip someone for being a fan of his or
mhm,
whatever. That's only personal taste. It's capitalism in the end. I disagree with that. Capitalism does not determine quality. That's a
right.
nihilistic view and a cynical view of art. I refuse to entertain or accept.
Well, and what we're talking about too is folks' standard for art, not their standard in regards to how much money a comic should make,
Yeah. And
right?
that's not an excuse to have low sales and think that you're awesome because your sales are low. That doesn't make your art good either.
Right.
That's the weird Christian view sometimes of because someone's poor, they must be a more pure heart than a rich person. It's like, no, just
Mhm.
because you sell less doesn't make your art good. Your art is either good or it isn't. Sometimes people buy good art and sometimes people don't.
Yep. And that's what we were talking about was the fact that he had every opportunity, right, to make a high quality comic
Mhm.
and make more money. If he actually was trying to take advantage of capitalism, wouldn't you try to maximize your profit? And you would do that by producing the best product or book that you possibly could so that you could retain sales and see sales growth over time. So I don't like using capitalism as an excuse for not producing good art and just saying, "Oh, well, I just produced this to make as much money as possible." I mean, good for you if that was your goal, that's fine, but don't be
Mhm.
surprised if people call out the quality of your book.
Yeah, it's just cynicism. It's a materialist view of everything. And if you believe that, then why shouldn't AI take your job? If art is just money, if that's what determines its value, if AI makes more money off its art, then it is a better artist than you, isn't it? That we can't have it both ways. People want to demonize, and rightfully so, demonize AI art. You should, but then you can't be a materialist cynic because if human beings are just meat that draw stick that sells money, wonderful, and AI does that too. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
You can't have it both ways. And that's my problem. That's what I've been trying to get at. And I'm so sorry. I'm on Theraflu right now because I'm sick. That's why my camera's off.
You
But
good.
it's the retreating to money in an argument, the retreating to sales, the retreating to this idea of a materialist view in art. It doesn't make sense. You can't have that and be against AI art. And also you can't be like, oh, AI is this, and I'm an artist. You can't
Mhm.
have it both ways. If it's art, it has to come from a human being because a human being has a soul. Art is the invocation of the muse. It is the divine incarnate. If it's not that, you got nothing.
Mhm.
Now, if people want to argue taste in art, that's fine. Some people don't like waterfalls. That doesn't make a waterfall not beautiful. It just makes you an asshole.
I
There's
think
a whole
this is just
C.S. Lewis. There's a whole C.S. Lewis article on this.
mhm. Appears we have just starting to get some agitation going on in the chat per the
Vegetation.
usual.
You're such a soft-spoken guy. How do you draw this much aggro?
I don't know, but what was it yesterday? I had someone basically say that they wish I would have had been aborted, and it's like Jesus. people, all because I just challenged the person on. I was like, hey, can you counter what Shane is replying to Eric? Essentially, that's all I said. Like, hey, can you just counter it? Because I came in with some smart ass comment, and him and one other guy just started calling me a degenerate and all that. And it's like, I mean, can you guys at least have a discussion or at least just state your points? Like, no, I can't. So Mindy says, in the end, readers mean most above all.
I agree.
It's taken CG 7 years to relearn this. If someone's buying it, that's good enough to uplift any creator. It's capitalism. Everyone will have different days. I disagree with that statement.
Yeah,
If the
that's two
readers,
different arguments.
if the readers mean the most above all, wouldn't you put your biggest effort into it? Wouldn't you go all out and make sure it's the best book possible within the resources that you have?
Yeah.
Just because you've made a bunch of money and it can look like you're successful does not mean you are actually respecting the readers or the backers. And I don't understand the whole comment here about it's taken 7 years for CG to relearn this. We're not even talking about CG right now.
Yeah, I didn't come from CG. I don't know the history. I don't care. I know people who are in CG, such as BA, who are wonderful people. I've heard stories of people not being wonderful people. I don't care. I've got two friends that live right down the road from me that hate each other's guts, but I'm friends with them. So
Hmm.
I don't care. It doesn't matter if it's capitalism. If someone makes good art under communism where they can't sell it, guess what? Tetris was made under communism. It made zero money for the creator for like 40 years. Does that mean that it sucks? No, it was the most sold game ever at the time in a capitalist system. How can this say then now it's Schrodinger's art has no value in one country, has all value in another country. So which one is true? If you base it off material gain, it's Schrodinger's art. It doesn't make any sense.
And I mean, that's great that he's for decentralization. And yeah, everyone
Yeah, I'm
is
for
free
that.
to follow whatever example they want. They're free to be
You just have to
part of
know it's
any
going to
group
lead
they
to a lot
want.
of crap. I don't
Hmm.
mean that mean. It's just anytime something is democratized or decentralized, you have more crap. That's just how things are. The more stuff that's made, there's more crap than there was before because that's just how that's the rule of what is it? The Pacini method. I forgot what it's called. But basically, only like 1% of 1% of 1% of good rises to the top.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm a Midwest boy.
Where are you living now? I don't want to dox you, but where are you at?
Michigan at the moment,
Oh,
but
nice. Yeah.
I grew up in the Midwest and all
You,
that, so
Michigan, you have the best emo music there, by which I mean the worst.
that wouldn't surprise me.
Uh, Matt's disgust for calling it. I'm not reading that because I don't know who those people are that he's mentioning.
That's true. Yeah.
Are you a dad, BA?
I am. Yep.
Okay, you
Yep.
got I am myself. You carry your dad energy very well.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's why I have such limited time and
Yep.
to stream and I mean, shit work on this type of stuff.
Oh, Eric, Ark Hutfels. I don't know. I hope Ripaverse is booming. More power to the guy, man. Like I don't have anything against Eric July. I just thought his first book was trash and whatever. But I won't accept the claim that just because something sells that it's good.
Mhm.
I'm good friends with some people who love Eric July, and I'm friends to some degree with Doug Ernst. I have him on the show. Iconic is working with Ripaverse in some capacity, I guess. I don't know from Twitter. I love Doug. Not a fan of the Ripaverse comics. Both of those things can exist at the same time. I like talking with BA. He's an online friend of mine, and I'm talking to other people who hate CG. I don't care.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah. I
most
mean,
people have that kind of view.
yeah, and that's what I've witnessed specifically in the CG space is that most of us we're not tribal to the extent of oh we won't interact with folks that aren't CG or whatever, and we don't even like use the
Mhm.
title CG really. It's just like, hey, we hang out with these folks, we hire folks within the group, we go on each other's streams. Like we just want the community to lift up, not just the CG community, but the indie community as a whole. Because again, when there's more readers in the indie community, there's more readers for CG creators. It's win-win. And the thing is, I have internet friends that are big Rippaverse fans.
Mm-hmm.
More power to them. I hope you enjoy it. Like, but I respect the hell out of them because they don't hold a grudge against me for having a different opinion. They can have a discussion or at least respect the fact that someone has a different opinion. It's that simple for
I mean,
folks.
my God, we're Snyderverse fans. We're used
Oh
to having
gosh,
to be friends with people who have different opinions.
I know. I mean, the amount of insults and stuff that we've had slung at us just for liking films is mad. You know, people think the indie comic space is bad. It's like, man, you get into some of the film fandoms and
Oh, film Twitter is bad.
it's absolutely wild.
It's always some pencil neck with a bad haircut telling you about the worst film ever is like the best film ever. It's like I'm glad you watched the Criterion Collection. Good for you, man. Like
So we're not saying that Eric is about elitism. It's actually that he's been making comments in regards to other folks in prose, it seems specifically, that are elitists, which is what we're countering.
yeah, sir,
Um,
I don't know who you are. I don't know if you talked to Eric. Good for you, man. More power to you.
yeah, it's the Wheelers.
Like
But
Joey
yeah,
Wheeler?
no, Mike Wheeler and Mindy, they
I'm not
do Booby books.
more power to him. I don't
You
know him.
know,
I know Joey Wheeler from Yu-Gi-Oh! But hey, if you're making comics, man, more power to you. Good for you. That's awesome.
yeah, I don't think he's necessarily an elitist. I think some of the comments he's said and interactions I've had with him myself, which I could go through that on another stream, that would take a while, um, would actually counter a lot of the things that he's saying about folks in the space. But yeah, no, that's not what we're arguing. We're just countering his stance that there are gatekeepers and elitists in the indie space, when in fact I think people just have standards and that gets misconstrued as being elitist.
Yeah, and I think if you're gonna use vague terms, like whoever is using them, just say who you have a problem with. Just or don't say it at all. Maybe that's a southern thing. It's like Ripa, if like if you get a problem with a person, say it. Like EVS, if you got a problem with a person, just say it. I don't care. Just go fight it out and or stop. But yeah, I don't get the Eric July. What do they call it? The hibbity jibbity? Is that it?
Mhm. Yeah.
Divinity, sir. I don't know who you are. I'm not going to push a narrative, man.
Yeah, we're not, and see, that's the thing. We don't push any narrative of people being bad people or worst people in the world or anything
Yeah,
like
I'm
like
not in
that. It's
any
like,
discords.
no.
There's not going to be any DMs, please. I
Yep.
can't figure out Discord. Have you figured it out, BA? Maybe I'm just too
Discord.
old.
I've been on there a bit. I don't know. I mean, I guess it probably depends on what server you're in and if people are actually like active and they engage on there. But in a lot of cases, it turns out just being like a broader DM group. And some of them just turn out to be right, just folks talking shit. Others, it's more just surface level discussions. But it's hard to keep up with, especially if there's so many people in there that it's like you can't even keep up with all the discussions, and it becomes a
Yeah.
bit overwhelming in time over time. So
What's up, Billy Power Max? But yeah, no, man. I would love to have more talks with you about this kind of this. Like, thanks for having me on this. This
of
topic really
course,
interests me because I care. I mean, I'm a devout Christian. I care about Christ first, but art is like number two to me. No, art is like something I greatly care about and will always talk about and defend. I don't care what group anyone's a part of. I don't care what drama anyone's had with anybody. Art is what matters to me, and I'll give my opinion on it. And thanks for having me on to give my opinion on it.
oh dude, for sure, anytime, man. Appreciate you joining. It's been a fun discussion, that's for sure.
Oh yeah,
Great topic.
I'd love to have you back on. I really, I know I keep saying it. I've got to get the guys. I would love to have a very long Snyderverse discussion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do if I could find a way to do like 4 to 6 hours. Let's just estrange both of our audiences.
Oh, there's some Snyder fans out there, even in CG. So
Good.
they might be afraid sometimes to speak up. I can't blame them, but hey,
Oh, I
why
got
we're
called
here.
I got called friends of a Nazi today for retweeting some guy who liked Snyderverse. I'm like, okay, okay, sure. I'm sure he's Sig Hyland because he loves Snyderverse. Okay,
Hmm.
I'm
I mean,
a
like
closet
this, I'd like to see some proof of this. I literally rarely bring up the Rippaverse on Twitter. Every once in a while, I'll chime in on something, but I don't fight with people, and I hate that. And it's like attack. Those words get bastardized so much. Like I don't view having normal discourse or asking for people to back up a stance or literally just asking for their stance as fighting with people. And usually it's I'll pop into maybe an exchange that like Shane was having with Draw and Talk, for example, where I'll be like, "Hey, can you actually provide some proof behind your claim?" Like, that's not fighting. That's just hyperbole, in my opinion.
well, I
I
love
think the
debate.
crazy cat.
Um, or just talking. Like if you just talk, you'll learn something. Someone else will learn something. The only people I've muted or blocked were people that clearly they were drunk or I couldn't understand what they were saying. Like there's some guys in indie comics like, man, you need a proofreader for your text messages. Like so like those kind of guys on mute. I think I only block people that send like scammy DMs or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
We're trying to. I know you're trying to do it too. You've been more consistent. Like I just want to create a space where actual conversations like this can happen and art can thrive. Because you're making art, we're making art. There are people that are consistently putting things out that are quality. You've just got
Mhm,
to find them. And I don't want to say support because like I don't really like using that term so much because I'm gonna be making my stuff regardless of how much support it gets. Anyway, it's gonna get done.
mhm.
But I don't know. I'm gonna go to bed now, man. But more power to you. Again, more respect to you. To you come into this sphere. I don't know. I'm gonna say this to your audience. I'm sure you guys know it. This dude came into a comic sphere somehow selling novels and made it work. So whenever we put out ours, I do want to sit down with you. But hey, walk me through your promotion plan because I don't know how you did it.
Oh yeah, anytime, man.
All right, I'll let you go, man. Everybody, chat. Thanks, everybody. I don't know anybody in here except maybe Baki, but more power to you guys. Thanks for coming out and thanks for bearing with me.
Of course, man. Thanks for being here. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot, man. Peace.
Have a good night, man. All right. So yeah, I don't think it was his best at the time. When you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, there were better artists out there, better line artists, better colorists, writers that again he could have worked with. So there's absolutely no way, even with the concepts of ISOM, right? Let's say he was dead set on it. I have to use ISOM. I have to use these characters in this framework. It still could have been better if he would have had some high level, quality of art and some, I don't know, more clean writing. Let's say it would have been better. So that was more of just his choices. And yeah, again, yeah, I agree 100%. No way that Glasshouse Studios was the best that he could afford with hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are many people in the indie space, and I'll include the Bartons, Joe Ball, Shane, EBS, Graham Nolan, right? All these folks, and even others that um, Rob Willis, for example, that I think produced better work than what was on ISOM 1, and obviously with the 3D assets and everything. So definitely not the best he could have afforded. So many chats. This is awesome. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. No, I don't think I'll send you the link. If I could get super chats, maybe I'd let you super chat me for it, but no, I don't really think you'd have an honest discussion. Maybe another time on a third party, but no, I don't want to really turn this into any sort of drama stream. Essentially, yeah, that's what I was thinking would happen. I can keep my channel, damn it. No, this is just my office. I wish I had like a finished basement. That would be kind of the dream. That's what I hope to have eventually. That would be great. What's going on? Survive Infinity, welcome. Thanks for being here. Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, hail Snyderverse. Yeah, see, we got some Snyderverse fans. Hell yeah. I got you, man. I got you. Well played. Well played. Yeah. The thing is, I people say that to me so many times, like, "Oh, you're constantly fighting, or you have beef with all these people," and it's like, I don't think you're actually paying attention to my Twitter at all. Let's do it offline, then in private. No one can benefit from any content. I honestly, I don't see necessarily the point to that. Clearly we don't agree on a lot of things, and you've already tried to troll me online and all of that. So yeah, I don't think there's really a benefit to that. All right, so let's pull up a campaign to promote. Let me pull this up here. All right, so this kind of takes me back to when I first entered the space. When it was about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years now or so. So yeah, probably back, yeah, late to 2022. One of the first books that really caught my eye was Reaper Destroyer, as well as Death, Death, Death. Those were the two that just really wowed me, especially from essentially smaller creators in the space. And yeah, Joe Sonntag, I have to speak really highly of him because he's an example of one of those guys that lent me a helping hand, that really helped me get to the point where I'm at now. I essentially had no followers, had very little connections in the space at all. But I really liked how Joe spoke. I really liked how he handled his streams and just how he was a good representative in the indie space. And so I just sent him a DM one day and was like, "Hey, do you think we could chat someday? I'd like to pick your brain, ask you a few questions." And to my surprise, he's like, "Yeah, no problem." So we literally had a phone conversation one day for like an hour, to where I just picked his brain and he helped me understand, like, hey, here's like a potential price range in terms of commissions for line art, in terms of coloring, lettering, right? Here's all the other costs that come into consideration, and just really helped me get to a point where I could decide, like, hey, do I want to jump into a full-blown comic, or do I want to take the novels and then do some sort of mini comic? And so point is, there's a lot of guys like Joe in the space that are willing to help lend a hand, that do videos, that do streams where they try to help others. And that is what I think we need more of. We need, and again, there are a lot of folks doing it, but we need more highlighting around the folks that are doing this, that are willing to just help others, give lessons learned and all of that. Because if we had more of that, especially from folks that have a large reach, then there's going to be less folks making those monumental mistakes right off the gate, and essentially making better comics and better books and having more successful campaigns. So huge props to Joe for doing that. And I know Joe has recently been shipping this book. This is, again, this is one that really caught my eye, and I know it's getting a lot of great reviews recently. And I want to try to do whatever we can to try to get this guy to 75,000. This is one that, in my opinion, should be at 100,000. I mean, the talent that he hired and the amount of effort and detail that he put into this project is a great representation of how you do things in the indie space. Um, so yeah, speaking of who's on his campaign, I mean, he's got a Shelby Robertson variant, he's got a Dale Keown variant, he's got folks from Top Cow, from Extreme Studios, folks that have worked on Spawn, and he worked with like Mark Polton. I mean, just a killer team. So a guy that again, with the resources that he had, he went all out. And this is exactly what, you know, we would expect someone with a lot of resources to do. And that's what we're seeing from a lot of the top guys in the space doing. And that's how to do it right. And that's how to set a good example in the space. So let's go through this a little bit and let's try to get some backers before he closes us out in the future. So he says, in a disparate New York City, Matthew Walker wages a battle over his very identity, locked in a struggle with an ancient spirit of death over control of a supernatural suit of armor to which both are bound. When wearing factions are immortals of immortals reveal themselves and their intentions to claim control of the armor, man of spirit form an uneasy alliance. So obviously here's your Dale Keown art. You cannot beat that. I mean, how awesome is that he had a chance to commission Dale? I mean, that's a dream for so many of us. I mean, I definitely at the top of my list in terms of if I could ever have someone do cover art for Vigilantes Creed, it would be Dale Keown. So big props for him to be able to get him on the project. But again, you can just tell that this really has a top cow feel to it and just a really unique character design, right? When it comes to the suit, when it comes to the mask, and just the overall vibe of this character, this is a book that stands out. And this is a book that, again, should have a lot higher funding than it does, in my opinion. And I know he'll continue to work at this level and make sure that his next book is at this level or even higher. But this is a fantastic looking campaign. He also has a supplemental book and just a lot of great stuff that comes with this. But you get a lot of interior pages with lettering, so that's fantastic to get a legitimate preview of the book. But yeah, some great panel layouts, unique panel designs. Just yeah, this looks awesome. I'm very excited to read this. This was again one of the first books I backed. This and Death were the two books that just they wowed me. They really stuck out, and I was so pumped to back these, and I'm so excited to read both. So definitely encourage folks to keep an eye on Joe as well as Joe Ball, who's the creator of Death. But yeah, I mean, look at this. This is pinnacle of indie comics right here. Just fantastic. Got trading cards, lots of good stuff. So yeah, let's please share this, get it out to folks, and try to get as many backers as we can for Joe. Again, one of those guys that sets a good example, helps lift others up, and is yeah, just great for the community. So let's support him. All right. And then let's do a quick BA recommends. All right. So today's BA recommends for indie comics is Silence Do Good by Salty Draws. So again, I mentioned I had a huge TBR of indie comics that I'm very glad that I waited to read them because, you know, gives me a chance to recommend them to folks now that I'm streaming and, you know, especially when they still have their campaigns that are active. So Silence Do Good was fantastic. So Salty is becoming more well known at the moment because he did one of the variant covers for Elephant as well as Cody Dennison's campaign, so Camelot. But he does the line art as well as the inking in this book, just extremely clean, vibrant line art and colors. And it had a really great story. I mean, obviously it's about Ben Franklin as a time traveler essentially, but had really good three-dimensional characters. It left you very, very excited for what's to come. Like I was bummed that there were not more pages. Like I'm ready to read the next one because you want to understand the motivation behind the villain, right? That's got this virtual reality world that's created by AI, which is, applicable topic to, today's society. And, you know, you're trying to also you're excited to understand, why did one of the people break off from working for that villain to essentially stop him and try to help Ben Franklin. But this book is actually currently available on Fund My Comic. I think the original campaign on Indiegogo raised somewhere around 14,000 or so, and it's on Fund My Comic. He's raised about 1,500 on there in storefront. But give you guys a chance here to see more of the art here. But very cool concept, and yeah, just fantastic art. He again, fantastic team. He had a professional writer that actually helped him on this book. He had Mike Barron as a consultant, and yeah, as you can see, just some really cool art here. So highly recommend everybody check this out. Let's play the trailer here. All right. Awesome. Yeah, fantastic book. Really enjoyed it. Excited for the next one. Salty's a great guy. He's another guy that promotes others. Good representative in the community. So let's definitely give him some support, and let's try to get him some more backers here. Let's try to catch up with the chat a little. See, people are a little bit butthurt that I don't want to bring them into the stream and have a pissing match with them. Also, you want to come on to criticize me. Hmm. Hmm. Shocker. Yeah, that I believe. Yeah, best parts of 90s comics. Definitely has that vibe. I know he's severely influenced by 90s comics. So, what's going on, Matt Cisco? Thank you for joining. Hail. Let's see. Complaining about Ethan. Shocker. Defending a guy who can't take criticism and is scared to talk to me. No, I'm not scared to talk to you. It's just that I don't think your intentions are good. So, yeah, I don't really want to waste my time arguing with someone that is trying to troll me, trying to make me look bad, all of that. Plus, you've been extremely weird on Twitter, like literally saving pictures of me and sharing them around and saying very non-hetero things about me. So I don't know about that. Mindy says maybe it's time we start prioritizing people who are mature enough to talk face to face instead of talk like mean girls on stream. You guys talk like mean girls on Twitter and on a bunch of streams. I've been nothing but polite to you guys whenever you guys show up in the chat. So I don't think I'm talking like mean girls or anything of that nature. I just don't have, like, why would I talk to someone that I know doesn't like me and wants to troll me? What's the point? And I've seen so many chats in streams where the exact same thing happens in the chat. I know you guys want attention and get some sort of engagement or rage bait off of me, but I don't really fall for that. Sorry. So I know Joe did a good amount of interior art, but there's also he had another group of folks as well that were involved, and then he had some folks doing some of the supplemental pages. Let's take a look here. I think Joe did a majority, if not all, of the interior pages for the main comic, but then he had inkers of Matt Bat, Joe Weems, Muriel Alquiza, Chance Wolf. So yeah, big team, but I think he did a majority of the interior line art. And yeah, Joe Ball, he did the black and white version of my mini comic as well as the duology cover. He has a book called Death, Death, Death that he's buttoning up. The campaign ended a couple months ago, but it looks absolutely killer. I'm pretty sure if you DM'd him, you could get a copy reserved for you, but it's gonna be like 300 pages, I believe. So it's literally a graphic novel. It's gonna be crazy. So it's not about having a third party to babysit and protect me. I think it's just proper etiquette that if you're going to have a debate, that you have a third party hold it on the channel. Because I especially don't like to go on other people's channel if their intentions are to troll and try to have some sort of debate. Because yeah, they could literally mute you, they can just talk over you, blah blah blah. And no, I'm not trying to get engagement or views based off of the drama that you guys want to initiate. So just not my cup of tea. But if you want to have a proper debate on a third party channel, sure. I'm sure it's just going to be all about how you guys don't like EVS and you don't like CG and all that. But I'm not going to change your opinions. You're not going to change mine. And so what's the point? Yeah, colors are killer on that book. Yep, typical agitation. Shocker. Not sure why you're asking me that. Yeah, definitely. No, at first you said to send you the link so that you could come on the channel, and then you said, "Let's do it private." But I don't see the point. Like, what is it that you want to convince me of? Like, I'm not going to join team anti-CG. Clearly, I'm pro CG, and my chat is CG. So I'm not going to let you try to get into my ear and toss dirt in it. Not going to happen. I'm not stupid. There's high school girls in my chat. What's going on? I don't troll Eric though. That's the thing. And yeah, he has every right to not talk with folks that he deems as, are trolling him. And no one's trying to dictate who he talks to or anything of that nature. Yeah, Daddy Ethan won't notice me. Daddy won't notice me. What do I do? uh, see, that right there is exactly why there's no point, right? If you can't have a a discussion without calling people idiots and names and all of that, I know that's exactly what you're going to try to do. You're going to try to get clippable moments so that you can pass them to all of your DM groups and all of that to take things out of context and try to make me look bad. And again, it's just you're just trying to get rage bait. That's it. And I also don't appreciate you calling my friends and people in the chat idiots either, by the way. So why would I bring you on here to do the same thing to me? And then if I kick you off, then you can cry that I'm gatekeeping you and you can play the victim card. And yeah, Frost Comics is the channel typically have debates on, so he would be willing to do that, I'm sure. Hmm. Well, if it wouldn't have to do with CG, then what would it have to do about? Because that's the only reason that you're here. That's the only reason why you pop into all of the CG streams, especially Ethan's, is because everything seems to have something to do with CG when it comes to you guys. No, not necessarily. We're not all CG here, but that just shows how welcome I am in regards to I don't only talk to just CG people, but I do have an issue with people that are anti CG or anti any group. I think that's absolute nonsense. Mm. All right, I think I've caught up with all the back and forth in chat, but real quick, let's take a look at my campaign here. So I think almost everybody knows that this campaign is going to be finally closing down probably around the end of February, so in about 5 weeks or less. So definitely want to see what we can do to maximize this campaign here. So let me get pulled up. All right. So we are just $28 away from $12,000 on Indiegogo. Would love to try to get this as close as we can to 15K by the end of February. I just added some awesome Elliot Rodriguez original art. It's actually a three-piece bundle right here at the end here for $250. So would love to get that to you or a lucky backer. We have the Grimoire original art, the Gargoyle print original art, as well as the brick wall art from one of the pages in there. So just $250 for all the original art. And we also have the Skunk Artworks original painting that will come framed as well. And that is a large one. It's like 18 by 27, something of that nature. So as everyone knows, everything is in stock, ready to ship, typically ship within a day or two. And if anyone's new, it is a two novels and a mini comic about a gargoyle and a team of vigilantes fighting terror in Detroit. Terror, which is headed by a maniac named Incubus, who has unearthed a Nazi-era mind control serum to build an army of super soldiers destined to take over the city of Detroit. And you can see some of the interior pages here. So essentially, the purpose of the mini comic is to give everybody some insight into the visuals for the book so that you have reference material for how they look and all the key details about them so that you can essentially play it out like a film in your mind when you're reading the novels because right novels leave out the visualization and a lot of novelists they don't even give you succinct cover art to actually introduce the character. So wanted to combat that, do something different, give you guys an introduction into the level of art that you can expect, if not even higher, for the full comic issue, which is underway. And every dollar that I raise on this campaign is going directly into the first comic issue, which is underway. Got about 18 pages of script complete at this point, and some character designs underway as well. So we'll be looking to ramp up that project here in the next couple months, and maybe we'll have a sign up page here in the near future. So hoping to get as much done before launching the campaign, if not having it fully completed before launching the campaign. And yeah, again, here's Joe Ball's art here. The artist for Death, Death, Death. So you can get this for the duology, which is both novels combined as well as the mini comic. So yeah, please check it out. If anyone has any questions, would love to answer it. There's also a 5-page prose sample. Got to give you guys a sample of the writing itself and a breakdown of all the characters here and obviously the team here. So, and yeah, there's also puzzles, lunch boxes, posters, a lot of fun stuff. So, please check it out. Support an indie creator, and yeah, let's see what we can get this campaign up to before I close it out. Thank you guys for your support. All right, let's check in on the drama in the chat. Let's see what shit talking is happening. No, you don't go on Ethan's streams because you're not welcomed on his streams, but you're constantly in his chat. So that's obviously what I was referring to. Mm, I don't know if I necessarily believe you. I don't think any of us want to talk to Eric. I mean, we don't really care or need to, at least from my perspective. So I don't understand why you guys are so needy for my attention. That's just strange. Yeah, you mean all the exchanges we've had where I've ratioed you every single time? You trying to say that the art in your books looks better than the art in my mini comic and you got ratioed? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, you couldn't even get attention of you trying to spread weird, I mean, photos of me and all that. Like it's just weird. Mm, man, you guys just want to fight with everyone. How about that? Like you guys don't get what you want, so you start arguing with everybody in the chat and you're desperate to get on my stream of all people, a small channel, just so that you can what try to stir up drama and fight with me. Hmm. Chat ain't having it. They're not having it. Should add some music for the background for this. Yes, I've seen you guys in his chats. Katie started it. I mean, what are we in 5th grade? Jeez, what the hell? I'm salty. No, I'm just an adult, and I'm not going to waste my time talking to people that have bad intentions. That's simple. Oh, they talk face to face. We're talking about parasocial relationships and talking about streams, talking on streams or on the phone. It's not face to face. It's so funny. I'm so entertained by the chat, and I'm still getting used to streaming. All right, so I'm just like reading the chat, just absorbing it and laughing, and I almost forget that I'm actually still live and streaming. I mean, luckily you guys can see the chat as well, but man, that's funny. All right, well, I'm gonna let you guys go. I appreciate you joining and interacting in the chat, standing your ground in the chat. I think it was a really fun discussion. Um, I think there's going to be some other stuff. Maybe we'll EFAP that one Eric July stream about gatekeeping and all that another week. And I also have like the initial kind of tweet exchange that I had with Eric, which is quite entertaining. But But yeah, thank you guys for being here. Please go check out Joe Sontag's Reaper Destroyer. Check out Salty Draws, Silence Do Good. Please check out Vigilantes Creed by myself. If anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know either on here in DMs or YouTube comments, you name it. I will make myself available. And yeah, just very honored that everyone would want to be here with me and listen to me and interact. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night and God bless.